And
Okay, actually, a question on that. I'm talking with a couple people around, as I love to do. The suggestion that if the Hammonds were released from prison, y'all really would leave.
we've never said that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought that might be a little bit of a stretch.
That is the first and foremost thing that we desire, is to stop the suffering in that family. They have suffered enough. And so that's why we're actually here. We would not be here in Harney County if it was not for injustice to the Hammonds family. Let us not ever miss sight of that. But let me also be very clear about these buildings. These will never, ever go back to the federal government. They must never go back to the federal government. The federal government must return to the confines of law. This is a perfect example of a government, a centralized power flowing over all of its things. And these buildings here, they function and operated out in helping to close off the resources of this county, take the ranches to oppress the people, to take this county from the most prosperous to the poorest. This is their base. This is very symbolic. This is their fortress. This is their castle, and we've occupied it, and it will never return. It will return to Harney County City, and it's on its path.
Did the BLM office in Burns close?
It
was in Burns, right?
Yes, my understanding that yes, it is. In fact, I believe Amton or Ryan went out and put a sign closed permanently, but I think the sign was taken down, but it's still closed. so that's they're ranchers by the federal government. So that it's a big deal. It may not seem like a big deal, but only 2 people have actually done that in the United States right now. Clive and Bundy one, me being the other. And so if those 2 ranchers sign that, that will now have doubled. And I know I've been in contact this day with groups in Utah, come to Idaho. They look at doing the same thing based upon the same principle, that we are going to completely disengage with the federal government and cancel these contractual agreements that they have intimidated the ranchers and people into. And so that's what that is. That's a cancellation of those contracts that they force upon us, called mandatory terms and conditions, standard terms and conditions. And so once you sign that, at that point, you have laid it all on the line.
Do you think I can get a copy of those?
Well, we have the one that Clive sent and the one that I sent, and they're in the process of trying to put something together in the mixture of the 2. Mine was 1 paragraph, his was 2 pages. And so anyway, we don't have that out yet.
Well, I'll make sure you have my email address so you can let me know.
Sure.
Yeah, that would be very good for a lot of people to see.
Okay,
you know, they could. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, that would be wonderful. We would. I'll get that from Sherry and do that. I need to run and try to get things set up. We're Skyping with ranchers from out of state.
That's right, okay, because we just got called back over to Ammon.
So. Oh, well, now that's the top drawer there.
No, you've been pretty good.
We're going to go, Hawk, and we'll be back in and give us 2 or 3 minutes, and we'll have a discussion with Ammon and Ryan Bundy.
Hey, thank you.
Debunk some of the things that are going around.
You got a call.
You're online.
Am I? Okay.
Here we go. Okay. Hi, my name is Don Alan Rico, and this is On Cue Viewpoint. We've come out to meet with Ammon, and part of this is mostly to debunk some of the things that are going around and get the truth of your side of the story, instead of just having people take bits and pieces and then word craft it in a way that it makes you look like what you're not. And so when we came in this morning, well, you know, it was funny because I brought and he picked it out to his friends, and he says, oh, and go ahead and don't stop, don't get, you know. And so it's the same as, you know, when people think of you occupying federal buildings to get this very big vision with, you know, coming in with arms and shooting, and it's, you know, unlike of what is really going on here. In fact, part of, you know, the feeling that we sit down and go through a class or class learning about the Constitution, things that are not even taught in schools. And so I think, you know, we'll probably put in a few of the clips of what you taught, plus provide that lesson for giving this morning. The people need to understand constitutional law and how our original country was set up, but understand the things that how it's being against. I'm just going to take a couple of things that this is our local newspaper, the Messenger Index, and it's there. And the words they choose just makes it look totally wrong, which you yourself said. I mean, you kind of laugh at it the way it was written here. The man behind the armed occupation of a federal wildlife refuge comes from a Mormon family that's been challenging government authority for at least 2 decades. So they already set it up that you're a little bit off. A lot of truth revealed later after Waco, Texas, and who was really off, and that was the federal government coming in and shut down. So I would challenge those who don't understand that to look at that as well. But all of this was done while they were had their ranch in their seats, so we couldn't do anything about it. And so we saw what the federal government was capable of the first experience of that. And I began a path of digging into what was really going on.
And what I found was that primarily the federal government was completely acting outside the authority that people give them. That the rules that were placed upon federal government, they were completely ignoring. And that those were doing acts that other countries have done that has and that as you follow history, you see, many nations have followed that same pattern, and it always what has happened is it ends up in taking of rights of property, and then ultimately taking of the arms, and then the next step is genocide. And that is a pattern that many nations have gone through throughout the history of this world, if you will. And that one was clearly our country was going down that path. And we were in the steps of the taking of property. And also, as you know, there's been a lot of effort to take away and disarm people. And so, and every time this has happened, the next step is that they begin murdering people, government begins to murder people. And it doesn't matter, it could be because of religion, because of political position, or whatever the reason is, because of their ethnicity. It doesn't matter. Then they end up killing them. So that is where I saw very clearly where we were headed.
Okay, but doesn't that sound conspiracy theory? You think a lot of people that are watching this, that's all they do, and they paint you as this crazy man, and taking the government down this government's taking us down this road. Isn't that what it sounds like?
I guess I don't really know what it sounds like because I'm not listening to it. I'm not on the other side, but I will say that we're very much pro-government. And what I mean by that is we understand that this system of government, which our founders set up, has been so successful that we've had primarily peace for many, many years in this country. At least here on this land. Oh, we had a civil war, but yeah, we've had peace for a long, long time, and we've had a structure of government that's brought freedom to many, many people and protected individual rights. But the way they set that up was a system of federalism. Federalism by doctrine is where each level of government checks and balances the other levels, and where each level of government has responsibilities and authorities that are given to them. And for example, the federal government's responsibility is to protect the states against the outside world. Okay, to protect from the world coming in and basically coming down into the states and taking the rights of the people. Okay. And so that's their job. That was the job that the people gave them. It's outlined in the Constitution. So national defense, international trade, and they also are an appeals court, so that if two or more states start to argue or have a dispute, they can appeal to the federal court, rather than going to war with each other. Okay. Then the state's job is to protect the county and the people from the federal government, right? Protect from the federal government coming down and trying to destroy or take over the states. And the county's job is to protect the people from the state, and the people's job is to make sure that their county is in check, that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, and then to live free and enjoy their liberties, enjoy their freedom and their property.
So I would say it's a government of the people, by the people, and for the people, rather than just a few.
So, exactly. So, crazy or not, we believe in government. We just understand that there's certain roles and there's certain duties, and that they're completely out of whack right now. Completely. And it's put the people into a situation where, like the Hammond family, and then they're being prosecuted for supposedly what the federal government says is their drafts.
Okay, let's talk about that for just a second. That's one of the things it talks about here. is puts in here that they were burning to cover up poaching. Okay, were the Hammonds poaching?
Not at all. It's so comical that they would say that because there's been hundreds and hundreds of hours of court proceedings that very clearly prove that that was wrong. And then the Associated Press comes in and just says what they want to say. Okay, to make someone feel, or to make someone look bad.
Okay, so and I don't think, the people that read this, they read it and that's where they get this idea. And so the purpose of this is to talk, the Hammonds, they say that the Hammonds didn't want you. They, get out of here. Leave us alone. Is that true?
Not at all. I just barely spent about 3 hours in the Hammond's home, sitting at their kitchen table, and when we got done, we hugged. They thanked me. They said that they support me 100%. And I've had many of those conversations in their kitchen or in their living room, and I've given them hugs and understood their love, and they understood my love for what we're here about. So, as far as that goes, it's untrue.
But why would newspapers say that the Hammonds said, just leave us alone? We want to go to jail and serve our term.
Yeah, well,
why would that be?
That's a good point, because about the week 3, the beginning of week 3, when I was kind of working with the Hammonds, the U.S. prosecuting attorney, the U.S. Attorney's office, called the Hammonds lawyers, and there were 2 of them, for Dwight and another one for Stephen, called them and threatened that if they did not end communications with me, that they would be detained early and put in a less desirable prison. Now, Dwight is 74 years old, so a less desirable prison, already he's probably not going to make it out. So a less desirable prison to him is certain death. And also, they're preparing their families to the ranch and all of their needs and all of that, for their wives to take over the ranch, so that because their husbands are going to prison for 5 years. And so to cut that time short, that's pretty serious threats that you were reading out. So they back away from what I'm saying. And they, rather than supporting or talking to me, more openly in public, they began to do it.
Okay. Now, but does that sort of badgering and threatening, does that bring home to you at all?
Yeah, and it's a direct violation of the Constitution.
But didn't they do that to you as well?
Oh yeah, they've done that. They've threatened me, they've threatened my family, that's really what this is about. Again, government not thinking that they have any rules. And when government doesn't think they have rules, and they begin to take life, people really abuse them. That's happening right now. It could be worse, there's no doubt about it. That's one of those things that if you don't stop it, or don't stand in front of it, then it will get worse. I don't want my children, I don't want my girls, my boys to have to be the subject of an abusive government.
It also talks here, it says, Hammond Bundy came to Oregon hoping to rally support behind his cause. Is that why you came here?
No.
Did you have a cause?
Well, I came here because I saw people that were going through the same thing that we went through, and I felt obligated to help them. And so if that is my cause, then yes. But I had compassion and love for my neighbors. I could see that there was major injustices that was happening. And I felt it was my duty as a neighbor to love your neighbor and to go help.
It's interesting that that people would poo-poo this particular thing because of the fact we're a culture of mentors, life coaches, and what do other than just simply go out and help people through situations that they've never been through? Now here you are, a person has gone through a situation likely, and all you did was reach out. Were you charging the Hammonds money to get through it?
No.
Okay, so it was, maybe you could be wasn't a mentor life coach for hire, but you did it because you could, and that is our culture in the United States.
Yeah, and we had some publicity, and I was, hoping that publicity would bring enough accountability to elected representatives and also to the court systems that they would expose the corruption and the abuse and the injustices. But what happened was that even though we had literally hundreds of thousands of people that were calling their state representatives, their county representatives, we did a legal notice regis of grievance, all of these things, calling for an evidential hearing board, all of those things happened. We did that, exhausting the prudent methods, and all of them were ignored, like completely ignored.
Okay. So this morning, I happened to catch you on a video once again in the presentation that you're doing. And one of the reasons that I did that was because the question came from a gal that she was talking about in August, they were going to go through similar, they are foreseeing similar proceeding going to be happening to them nearby. And they were actually asking you to come out and do it. But you counseled her before anything, go to your sheriff, see if he can take care of it. Go to, you gave her 4 or 5 steps before you would have, and said, if all of those fail, then yes, we'll come and stand. Okay? And so, to me, that doesn't seem like, here's a person just out seeking the country for a cause to find the become the hero for it, but other than just simply teaching people what they need themselves.
I mean, here was an individual that has a mind, that's been in the family since 18, and the Bureau of Land Management is taking efforts to take contact. And they're doing it through technicalities. They are so expert at doing it. Bureau of Land Management. And so what we counseled her, after giving her the understanding of her rights, and she understood it, what we counseled her to do is, when it comes, one is end the contracts that they have with them, because the federal government doesn't have constitutional authority to come into the state and control the land and resource. So where they get their authority is from contracts that people sign with them, then they're held under contractual law. So we said, get yourself free from those and begin to stand on your rights without the contract. And then if they start to take action against you, we're talking about the Bureau, if you begin to take action against you, then go to your sheriff, show them your claims, show them your rights, show them how long you've been using it. Go to your commissioners, show them the same thing. See if they will stand for what is right, stand for the Constitution, because they took an oath to do that. And begin to protect their rights, because all it takes is the sheriff saying, hey, you're not going to do that. You're not going to break the law. Hold that one. Uphold the Constitution. So don't do that. Literally, that works. And then if they can do that, then the proper protection is done. And if they will not do that, meaning the sheriff and the commissioner, then we promised her that we would come.
So basically, you're simply teaching, your cause is to teach Constitution, what people's rights are, how to be free.
Yeah, that's part of it. And get people to begin acting on their own. Begin with the knowledge, with the example, and understanding, begin acting on their own rights. And then hopefully others around them will begin acting so that they can protect each other.
I'm going to read one here. It says, leader of the group, oath keepers, past and present members of military, first responders, police officers who pledged to uphold the Constitution, issued a statement saying Hammond Bundy has gone too far. Do you know what they're talking about on that?
It's interesting because that group that he's talking about, or whoever wrote it, they did issue something, but then later they came to me and said they were wrong. They are here now working.
The reason I brought that up is because you told me to look around and talk with people. We happen to be talking with one of those guys, and a couple of the boys came in and says, "We're here to support what you can." And I read that and I say, something's conflicted of what really is happening here.
Well, when we came in here, we did become in here peacefully. I don't know. I mean, I haven't packed a gun since I walked in here. I packed a gun for weeks when I went shooting with my family. But because of the media and their slant on everything, they made it act like we just raided a federal courthouse or something. And
Exactly.
yeah, and so everybody stepped back and go, "Whoa, what is going on? He's gone too far. He's fallen off the track." But then, as they begin to understand the truth of what's happening, all of a sudden here they now come rushing in because they believe in this. What we're doing is right. They understand the principles that we're doing, that we're standing on, and how we are being the lawful ones, and that there is no future. The only future is this way, standing in this way for what is right. And so I'm not surprised they reported it that way, because they conveniently left off that now all of those groups are fully in support and have sent men and supplies and finances and everything to this.
Two things I would like to ask. It's about this particular refuge. It says you're occupying, armed men occupying. You guys are using it. You guys see anybody here? I don't see anybody out there saying if you guys don't leave. What's the deal?
Well, the interesting thing, besides the sheriff, or not the sheriff, well, the sheriff and the county sheriff and the judge, and understanding this is a federal bill. We have not had any federal official tell us to leave. None. Not one.
Or even ask kindly?
Not even asked kindly. Not that we would if they asked, but they have not asked us to leave. One federal official.
Okay, so they don't mind you using it. It seems like.
Well, the thing is, you got to get right. In Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17 of the Constitution, right, it outlines the rules that the federal government must follow in order to lawfully administer, own, or control land and resources inside the state. Okay? We're going to get a little technical here. And the rules are this. In order for them to lawfully, according to the supreme law of the land, according to the Constitution, own this land, they would have had to first go get consent from the state legislatures. Okay? They actually have to go to the state legislatures and get them to pass permission, consent, for the federal government to own this land. Second, they have to purchase it from the rightful owner. So if it's private or if it's state or county, whatever, they have to purchase it. And third, they can only use it for the erection of forts, magazines, arsenals, dockyards. Okay? Those are the rules. And that was because, remember, the purpose of the federal government is to protect the states from the outside world. So anything that is not conducive to that, such as military bases, dockyards, they're not supposed to own that land inside the state. Okay, so they have been holding this land unconstitutional, unlawful for many, many years. And according to the supreme law of the land, they do not have rights or permission from the people to be here doing what they're doing. And so we come in as the people, and we begin to use this facility, and we've used this facility to do what? To promote freedom, to promote liberty.
Upholding the
Constitution. When this building from its very beginning has been a tool to oppress people, to put chains on them. And actually has this refuge is 187,000 acres, 50 miles long, 40 miles wide. And it has taken over 100 ranches to make. And literally over, so that means 100 families that came out here and established their rights in ranching were pushed out through, condemning of land, flooding,
Which is
courts,
what they were
you know,
trying to do to the Hammonds.
yeah, through the prosecution, yeah, they're trying to take their ranch so they can add their ranch to the refuge. And this is what they've been doing for many, many, many years. And so we came in, we put a stop to it. We're not going to allow them to continue to destroy families, to destroy heritages, to destroy property, and just let it become the normal.
One last question. Maybe this one goes. You were having an interview with Megyn Kelly on Fox News. You guys were talking about the suit against the Hammonds.
Yeah.
And you asked her who the plaintiff was.
Right.
And she denied the answer. She says it was her show. She asked the questions. You can ask all the questions you want, or direct it however you want on this show. That's what we're trying to do, is get the truth. Well, why was that so important that we knew who the plaintiff was?
Well, so she, kind of the narrative was it, or the dialogue was, she asked me, well, it sure looks like the Hammonds, received due process. They have been basically found guilty, and now they're, and there's a tremendous amount to that. And then I asked her who the plaintiff was, and then she paused and was kind of, no one was going to answer, because I meant for her to ask that. And that was my point. My point is here you have a federal agency, right, that is that it wants the Hammonds land. Okay, it's very clear they tried to acquire it for many years. Then they tried to push them off through taking of their water, fencing off their access. All of those things have happened, so they try to put them into duress. And now they're using the tactics of prosecuting. Okay, so here the federal agency wants it. Now, who's the plaintiff in the prosecution? The federal government. Who's the judge? The federal government. Who selects the jury? The federal government. Who makes the court rules? The federal government. Who lays the laws and codes that they're trying to enforce? The federal government. And
so cards are stacked.
Yeah, it's injustice. In fact, according to the American Land Rights, there's been over 100,000 cases that have been the federal government against individuals on land rights issues. Guess how many of those the individuals won out of 100,000? Zero. Zero. Every one of them sided with the federal government. Okay, because it's stacked against them. My dad explains it the best, I think. He says going into a federal court on these land issues is like a man coming into your home and abusing your wife and children. And so you want justice, and you take him to court. And when you're there, you're thinking you're going to get justice, and they say, all arise for the honorable judge. And a man walks in a black robe, and it's the very man that abused your wife. That's how it is. There is no justice found in the federal court system. There hasn't been for a long time. And that is one of the reasons why we're here, because the people are in a very precarious situation. And it's not the first time in history that a people have been put in this very same scenario. And if we do not take action, it will end up going down the same path that they went.
Do you find, though, that people are so blinded, so misled that they can't see?
Those in the system, for sure. Okay, those that are in the system employed by, I hate to say generalize, because that's not all true. There are most that we see in the system are blind, right? But outside of it, they're kind of in kind of question, if you will. But then those that are, understand the land issues, business owners that have to actually produce and make an income for themselves, they fully understand this. And they see where the federal government's coming down into every industry. It's come down into the auto industry, the banking industry, the finance industry, coming down into the the housing industry, into the healthcare industry, and they're literally going down in there. They've identified where the wealth is, and they've come through their codes and regulations. They've identified and grabbed a hold of that and just sucked the wealth right out. And so it's leaving very little for the business owner, for the employee, really, and for the product to be able to make a profit. And that's what they're doing.
Basically strangulating.
Yeah. I like to call them modern day conquerors. They found a very deceptive way to come down and conquer. Because conquerors, all they did is they went in and they controlled the land and resources, and then they controlled the people. Okay. Well, that's all they're doing. They've come down in and controlled the land and resources, the industries, and now, therefore, they can control the people. They're plundering upon the American people's wealth.
Is there any question that I haven't asked you that I should be asking you?
I don't think so. You've done a pretty good job. It just, if I could emphasize again that point that all wealth is generated from the earth. Everything that we have, everything that we benefit from man comes from the earth. And our clothing, our food, our houses, our comfort, our vehicles, our phones, all of that came from the earth. All of those resources to make those came from the earth. And whoever controls the land and the resources has full control of the people. And our founders understood that it was the only safe place for the land and the resources was distributed into the people's hands, into the individuals, that it was not safe in one entity, whether it's corporation, whether it's government, or whether it's just an individual that, owned tons of, it wasn't safe there, because then the people couldn't access it, they couldn't use it and benefit from it, and it would hinder their pursuit of happiness. And so, I'll just leave with that. We must protect the land and the resources, or we do not have a future.
Very good. Appreciate it. This is, once again, Don Allen Rico with On-Q Viewpoint. We've been with Ammon Bundy just to kind of get some of the meat and potatoes of what's really going on. Thank you for letting us come out and be with you.
Yeah.
Well, again, very good.
A few more questions?
Sure.
Oh, bless your
You have
heart.
to take this.
I have to take that? Okay. Just so you know, we are readoutnews.com out of North Idaho, and we're teaming up here with Revolution Radio and You Are Live. So, I kind of want to talk a little bit more about the town. In the week that I've been here, it does seem like there is a shift towards your position.
Absolutely.
There's still a division. There's still,
always going to be a division.
but I think it's actually swung the pendulum a little bit past the halfway point at this time. You wouldn't necessarily see it from last night's meeting. To stop your First Amendment rights and wouldn't let you speak and things like that. On that.
The interesting thing is, most people don't understand, but there was another meeting where there was over 400 people, and they were in, open support of what we're doing. And the county, well, Grassley, I shouldn't say the county, but Doug Grassley and the sheriff, they held another meeting, and they even moved it up an hour so that they could try to pull from the meeting we were having. And so the people that were there at that meeting would have been the worst group of people that you could ever have. However, there was still over half of the people, well over half the people, at their meeting that was still in support of us. So the way that we can assess this is there was about 100 people that are pretty loud against what we were doing there in that meeting. But there was probably around 600 people that were there all together and 500 of them were in support. And at least in some measure, and many of them in very open, open support. So, yeah, the tide has definitely turned. Well, and people are beginning to understand why we're here, and they can hope in that we might get something done.
The first meeting you were referring to, I think a lot of people learned some of the power that they have that they back to the government-controlled schools. Personally, that's what I know. They don't teach that. Is that the key to all of these issues? You think is teaching the Constitution in school again the way they used to?
Well, that's the key to maintaining it. But the problem is we have deteriorated to the point where we have to do some restoration before we can just maintain. Because we can't maintain where we're at. It's unsustainable. And so that's what we're doing here. We're getting the rancher back to ranching, the logger back to logging, miner back to mining. We're setting this example of how the federal government does not have control to come down into the state and to control its industries, and to control the people. And up to their cage in Washington, D.C., and begin protecting the people from the outside world, which is their job to do. And that's what we're doing. We're basically enforcing those things. We're either going to get it done or they're going to kill us. And that's because we can't do it. It will not work. It will be much more detrimental to leave it alone than to chance to get it done without that.
I know the Hammonds, and it has extended to the county residents. The discussion part of it around town last night and this morning.
Really? However, the Hammonds are a symptom of a bigger problem. And if we just left at that, if all the people just ended and left that, it would certainly happen again. Mm-hmm. One is the Hammond case itself is setting a precedent. A precedent that the federal government can abuse people's, and intimidate them for speaking to other people, that they can take away their property without compensation, without a willing buyer, willing seller, that they can impose cruel and unusual punishment. And also they can put someone twice in jeopardy. They can try and put them in prison, and then they do that sentence, they come out, they get with their families, get back to their life, and then 2 years later they put them back in prison for the remainder of 5 years. This is all setting a precedent that is very dangerous. And so even if we just ended with the Hammonds said it best, this is not just about us. This is a much bigger problem.
But you have had some effect on the county. I understand the BLM office is closed now.
Oh, yeah. The county, the U.S. Forest Service offices are closed. This is closed. What we've done is we broke the chains. And as long as they don't come back, because they're all unconstitutional, they're all breaking the law in what they're doing. As long as they choose it. They just have to choose to begin to use their land as appropriate to them, as established by their forefathers. Use it and not get back into the signing contract and to win a constitution. And so we broke the chains. Now it's up to them to keep those chains off.
One last thing. Do you have a message for Judge Grassi or Sheriff Ward?
I really don't, because other than, I've talked to them a lot. And my energy and effort was spent in getting them to defend individual rights.
And all they have done up to this point is proven that the only thing they're going to defend is government. I mean, that's all they've defended at this point. And even all those men downtown boarding off all of the county courthouses and all of the equipment, all it is an effort to protect government. And yet now that the Hammonds go to prison, they did not one thing. In fact, Grassley not once ever even had a conversation with the Hammonds about it. The sheriff didn't either until I got a meeting together and actually got them to come together and meet.
Really?
And still to this day, Judge Grassley or the sheriff has never gone out to where the fires are at. They've never gone to the ranch. Never, ever have gone to the ranch. And they've never even gone down to their house to Dwight and Susie's house in town, which is only 4 blocks from the county building. So that just shows how much they care. They do not care about protecting people. They only care about protecting and defending government. And that is a problem we have. It's a big problem. Because they were organized to protect people, not organized to protect themselves.
Are the Hammonds, the ladies, are they getting all the help that they need?
They are. They're getting a lot of help, support, the people going out to the ranch. You know, that doesn't, you know, they have children, they have loved ones, they have grandchildren. And you know how it is. I mean, can you imagine not being able to be with them for years? Dwight's going to be 79 years old when he comes out. And 5 years of his life been stolen from him, away from his grandchildren. He already had to work literally his guts out to try to pay for the $400,000 fine. He was driving a truck 15, 16 hours just to pay it before he went to prison so that they wouldn't lose the ranch. And then top of that, during the court proceedings, they made them sign first right of refusal. So if they couldn't pay the fine, the federal government was the only one that they could sell it to. And then they put on top of that, they put a mandate on them that they could not buy and sell anything more than $500 without the government's permission. That's where they're at right now. And then the Hammonds have spent upwards to $1 million in their defense. They've completely ruined this family as far as financially, and they've broke them to the point where they just have almost given up. And it's a tremendous injustice that they placed on them. It's even hard to talk about.
Well, I'll be honest with you. When I first came out here, I wasn't sure. You know, I was one of those people that the whole reason I came out here is because all I knew is what the mainstream media was coming out. And we wanted to know more. We wanted to know a little bit more of the truth. And I've got to encourage everybody to come out and see this because it's a lot different when you're here.
Yeah.
You know, when you can actually talk to the people in town and you can talk to the people here. I was telling everybody I actually feel safer here at the refuge than I do in town.
A lot of people have said that. Yeah. They feel a lot safer. And that's because what they did downtown, they're trying to make you afraid. You know, keep the people divided against uniting with what happened here. It's very interesting what has happened. It's
very, and transparent breeds trust. You're all very transparent here.
Yeah, our policy is sunlight is the best disinfectant. And we're very open. We talk, we explain. But go try to do that downtown.
No, I've been shut down quite a bit.
Yeah, you can't. They got metal detectors, chain link fences, and armed guards just to go in there and just to have a conversation.
Yeah.
Here we're free. We've had hundreds of people, from the community come, the media, very open, very, loving and supportive. And that's one of the things that, Judge Grassley and Sheriff Ward don't understand, that you don't unite people through force and fear. You can force them to try to be united. They might look like they're united. You unite people through agency and through love and through caring for people. And that's how you unite. That's what we have here. We're united. We have a job to do, and we're working hard to get it done. So,
Well,
Thank you.
I think you're doing a great job. I really do. And I think the people in town are starting to see all the positive effects for it.
Yeah, I hope
I do. I know you're tired. So I'm going to thank you and I'm
Okay.
going to let you go.
Thank you very much.
No, give me a hug. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Well, that sucks, folks. All right, hold on. Sherry's battery. Thank God it waited till the very last second there, but Sherry's battery popped. I think she's got a spare. She's trying to get that because I think we have Brian Bundy lined up as well. And then, daylight was standing, but we're going to take a little bit more of a scenic tour if they have the time. I mean, like I said, daylight was standing to kind of look around and just kind of show everybody where they are and what they're involved in. And Sherry does have to go home tomorrow. I'm looking for somebody to rotate in. The paycheck sucks. Basically, we will do our best to cover as much expenses as possible. We need you to report our way, and that is completely neutral. We're not going there to rabble rouse or create or make our own news. We're not trying to cause any trouble. And so far, we've gained a little trust with everybody there because they understand we're there to report the story, not make the story. And also down the line, we're going to work on trying to actually broker some dialogue to get set up between the Paiute and these guys out there at the ranch or out there at the resource center. I keep saying the refuge, but now it's the resource center, Harney County Resource Center. There you go. Okay, say that 700 times really fast while you think it's called something else. In the meantime, she's looking for a spare battery for her phone. So I'm just going to put it on standby for a minute and just kind of hold out and see what happens next. It's kind of all I can do. So stand by.
And I gotta say that, you know, it feels more. This case is a little. And when it's time to do some real work, you know. Hey guys, this is Jason Manteno with Oath Keepers Media here. I'm here at the Maller Refuge with the Citizens for Constitutional Freedom, here with my friend Finicum Lavoy and Lavoy Finicum.
Lavoy Finicum,
absolutely. Yep. I'm here with Lavoy Finicum, who, as you know, I've interviewed before, and he's really taken a stand with the BLM with his own ranch. And now I was very pleased to see that he's here amongst our fellow patriots that are out here taking a stand against the BLM. Thanks for taking the time to speak with me.
Oh, absolutely, Jason. It's an honor to meet you in person.
Yes.
I enjoyed visiting with you, but now I get to meet you in person.
And that's what's great about these operations is, you know, you build these relationships online, and then when it's time to do some real work, you know, the real men get out there and women, and they get out there and do that work. So it's good to meet those people when you can. So tell us why you're here. What made you decide to leave your ranch, come out here to Burns, or outside of Burns, Oregon, and do what you're doing?
Well, let me tell you, I hadn't planned on being here, but let's be very clear what brought me here. It was the atrocities that are being perpetrated upon the Hammond family, where he and his son, 75 years old, and he and his son, Dwight and Steve, are now thrown back into prison a second time for the same offense, and for a fire of 140 acres of brush.
Right.
And which happened 11 years ago, by the way.
Right. And this is, I mean, you and I, you're from, not Nevada, you're across the line, right? Arizona, but very close to the Bundy Ranch. Yeah. And me being up in Montana and cattle country up there, these types of burns happen. I mean, I run past burns happening really on a weekly basis up there, whether it's, you know, part of the forest burns or part of, you know, just ranch land burns.
Yeah, prescribed burns has always been part of land management. The federal government does it all the time. Private individuals do it on their private land with these big areas. It's a way for maintenance of the land to help, you know, burn off unproductive brush there's no feed, to drive the nutrients back into the soil so that there's more feed for wildlife and cattle alike.
Absolutely. Now, this case is a little different than we saw it with, say, the Bundys, or than yourself, where we had private land happening. And there was a court case. They were found guilty by a jury of their peers, supposedly. Now, there's some real questions with that, though, and I want to address that because
I don't think it was a jury. It was just a court ruling.
Just a court ruling, okay.
Not a jury of their peers.
So, but they were found guilty. But there's some serious questions around that. In that there was evidence now that's coming up that was the prosecution.
You're referring to the Hammonds. I thought you were referring to Cliven. Yes, it was a jury of their peers, and they were found guilty. Correct. And yes, there are some real serious questions coming to light where this needs to be relooked at. That's part of that redress of grievances. Why? And that is where Ammon has taken and exhausted over a long period of time trying to get the officials to, you know, the judges, the county commissioners, and others to reconvene just an evidentiary hearing to relook at these new things that have come to light.
Right.
And petitions with tens of thousands of names on them. They completely ignored that large of a response just to say, oh, they're all crazies, you know. So that is what the judge said of these people here in this area and other places that had the concerns and signed that petition. They're just crazies.
Right, and that's kind of how I try to label the entire movement. A lot of times we've seen that, but that's far from the case. Everybody involved seems to be very level-headed, very calm, very intelligent people to begin with. And you're right, Ammon has done an exhaustive study. For you people who want to go check that out, it's at bundyranch.blogspot. I'll put the link into the notes at the bottom of this video. But please check that out. It really is an important part of this case. So a lot of people also are a little concerned that you guys have occupied these buildings here. And I gotta say, at first when I heard about it, I thought it may not have been the wisest decision just because of the timing with what was happening with gun legislation with Obama. It seemed like a good, gift wrap gift. And but I gotta tell you, being here, experiencing the people that are out here and the atmosphere, my mind is changing a bit. And I gotta say that, it feels more like the occupation of a dean's office, something you see out at the campus.
Right.
And how many people a little bit about what without any guns.
Exactly.
I say at first when I heard about it, I
names on them. They completely ignored that large of a response just to say, oh, they're all crazies, you know. So that is what the judge said of these people here in this area and other places that had the concerns and signed that petition. They're just crazies.
Right, and that's kind of how I try to label the entire movement. A lot of times we've seen that, but that's far from the case. Everybody involved seems to be very level-headed, very calm, very intelligent people to begin with. And you're right, Ammon has done an exhaustive study. For you people who want to go check that out, it's at bundyranch.blogspot. I'll put the link into the notes at the bottom of this video. But please check that out. It really is an important part of this case. So a lot of people also are a little concerned that you guys have occupied these buildings here. And I gotta say, at first when I heard about it, I thought it may not have been the wisest decision just because of the timing with what was happening with gun legislation with Obama. It seemed like a good, gift wrap gift. And but I gotta tell you, being here, experiencing the people that are out here and the atmosphere, my mind is changing a bit. And I gotta say that, it feels more like the occupation of a dean's office, something you see out at the campus.
Right.
And how many people in the administration right now have been part of those types of political activism?
I think a few might have.
Yeah.
Don't know specifically.
So let's talk about that. And yes, there are guns here. There's Second Amendments being exercised, but I think it's important to note that as a whole, the liberty movement since Bundy Ranch on, and you'll recall at Bundy Ranch, it first started off without any guns.
Exactly.
They started off. I remember that.
I never had one there.
Yeah. Pulling up his shirt saying, "Hey guys, I left my guns at home. I don't even have a pocket knife." And that was the day that they sucked the attack dogs on them.
And tased them.
Yeah, exactly. The next day, the guns came out, and it changed the dynamic. And people were treated with respect. People were treated like human beings.
Well, there's an old saying. I thought it came from the old country of France, where it says one sword tends to keep another sword in its sheath, and that's exactly where all the guns should be, is holstered in their sheaths. And we should all be neighborly, kind, and friendly.
Absolutely. And I want to really point out, folks, I've been to every operation that Oath Keepers has been a part of. Now, this is not an Oath Keepers operation, but it's an important part of the Liberty Movement, which is why I'm here. From every operation I've been to, not one bullet has flown, not one drop of blood has spilled. That every one of these operations has been done, with grown men and women acting responsibly.
I hope that it always continues to be that way. But regardless, we stand, for freedom. We stand peacefully, but we stand firmly.
Can you tell us a little bit about what the decision-making process went into the occupation here?
I can. For myself, I came here because of atrocities upon the Hammond family was going to come and put some flowers on the doorstep and then go home. And as I was traveling up here, I think Cliven had called just to check on me, see how I was doing with my own issues with the BLM. And I told him that I was going to go up and support the Hammonds. He said, well, maybe we can commit some carpooling. And so his son Ryan met me, and he hopped in my truck, and we tooled on up here, and we expected to be back the very next day. Ryan didn't. I think he had one to change of clothes. I had a couple of change of clothes, but that's the way it went down. We found out it just prior to the march. In other words, when we got ready to, just about an hour, 45 minutes before the march, excuse me, we were pulled into a meeting wherein the Ammon listed all the avenues that he had exhausted over an extensive period of time to get redress for the Hammonds, and how they had been flatly ignored, not responded to. And then he said, if we allow this to stand, this shall become the new normal for American citizens. It is time to do more than just to allow these things to go on and to have good people to be terrorized as they have been, and now in prison, not once again, but twice. And this is just unacceptable. And so he says we need to act. And at that point, he laid out the plan that we should come out here and occupy. And so what happened was, just before the march, about 45 minutes before, we pulled into Burns, me and Ryan, just prior to the march, probably about maybe 2 hours or hour and a half before the march. And so he called us inside with a meeting. There's locals there. I met them, and there was us and a few other people that had come to support, and where he then again, as I said, laid out his case of every avenue that had been exhausted and flatly ignored and refused to be even responded to in any manner. He says we cannot allow this to stand. And thereon he says, I feel from my heart we should come over here and occupy this Malheur Wildlife Refuge. And so I raised my hand and said, Ammon, are you telling me that all these years we've been trying to draw a defensive line, getting pressed here, stepping back, pressed here, stepping back, and we keep losing ground? He says, are you now saying that this is a step forward, a peaceful step forward to reclaim? He says, yes, I am. I said, well, that's what I thought you meant. And he says, who will go with me? There's actually a county deputy in the room, and there was several people. This is we appreciate what you're doing, but this is just one bridge too far for us. And they excused themselves. And at what point Ammon went and did the support march,
right?
And me and Ryan and a handful of other people. I was the last car. There was about a caravan of 4, maybe 5 vehicles that came here. I think it's 4 in a trailer or something like that. Not very many, just a handful of us. And so we're tooling. I'm actually the only one in my truck. And actually, it was a rental car because my truck had broke down. so I'm tooling out here, and as I'm coming out, you do a lot of thinking, because have you ever heard the term crossing the Rubicon?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It means that when you cross the Rubicon, when Caesar crossed the Rubicon, that means there's no turning back.
Right.
And so, anyway, I'm driving out at the very last vehicle, and I'm saying, I haven't crossed the Rubicon yet, but I'm getting close to it. Is this really, and so, I said, yeah, I'm with you, Ammon, when he said he was with me, and we actually knelt down and prayed and we come out. But you got a lot of time. It's like almost 45 minutes or hour out here, so a lot of time to think about that as we're traveling out. And anyway, because there's no going back.
Right.
There's no go back. And as I'm traveling out, I want to share this experience with you. That it's big flat, so your readers or your viewers understand it's just snow, big old flat, and the road's kind of raised, and there's fence posts along the side on both sides. And up ahead, there's this big, beautiful bald eagle just sitting on the post watching us come. And as we go by, and the last time I go by, he lifts off and flies, and I go, it's okay. This is for freedom. Freedom is worth everything.
It's amazing you say that story, because as we were coming in convoy yesterday, I was embedded with 3%ers and the guys coming out here. As we were driving up, not before this turn here, but over, literally the same thing happened where there was an eagle, and we made mention over the radios how, there's this bald eagle and seems to be a good sign for freedom.
Well, this to me is deeply personal and spiritual to me, because I believe that God intends for all His children to live free. I believe that, and there's no way that what has happened to the Hammonds is freedom. And the reason that has happened is because we have allowed such a centralization of power without accountability of the people. And so, if it had not been for that, I would not be here, sitting here in the now newly renamed Harney County Resource Center. And so I am, and we've laid everything on the line. All that we have, is in jeopardy, and that's okay. It doesn't matter. What matters is you try to do what's right and just let the chips fall where they may. That's what you do.
All right. Well, thanks for taking the time to talk with us. Is there anything else you want to add before we let you go?
No. One thing I want to do say, because sometimes they get a bad rap, is the militia, and they came out with tacked out and stuff, but they travel that way in a protective detail,
right?
And that's understandable. But the media loves to eat it up. But that's who they are. And from a distance, we have felt the support of them saying to the federal government, just leave them alone.
Right.
They're not hurting anybody. They're 35 miles from the nearest place. They're out in the middle of a snow patch. They're not threatening anybody. Just leave them alone. Don't do crazy. Leave them alone. And I think they feel that. And I understood when the news media person told me today that indeed they were going to unoccupy that school and let the kids go back to school today. The federal agents that occupied that and made a fortress out of the school, they're the ones that instilled fear in the community, coming and setting up like a armed camp, and then lying to us as, we had to close it down because the families were scared. They closed it down so that they could use it as a staging place for a military operation. Yeah. What liars? What's liars? We don't need to escalate things like this.
Well, it's illegal for being you to lie to them. We get in trouble for that, but there's no laws for them to.
There's a double standard. It's time that the federal government be held to. We should be equal under the law. For example, you talk about equal under the law. The Hammonds set a backfire to save more land, a backfire to stop another fire.
And they actually did. They saved it.
They did, and they are charged as a terrorist and go to prison. Twice. Where I'm from, Kaibab Mountain, there's what's called the Warren Fire. Just, the last big fire out there not that long ago, where it was a controlled burn by who? The federal government. It gets out of hand. Burns thousands and thousands of prime timber. Did anybody go to jail? Did anybody even lose their job?
No.
So we live under two sets of standards. We are not equal under the law. We have the federal class that protects their own. And then we have us, thus the lower class.
Sure, and even the state employees too. I think there seems to be
a hierarchy.
You're either part of the system or you're not. And
where does the privileged class actually receive their monies from? It's from the working class.
They do.
And so
it's a false economy. It really is.
It is, and we all understand that. But this is just such an egregious example. How could we have done anything less? We Ammon exhausted every avenue. There was no other recourse to take but to peacefully stand up and take this, to make the statement, to try to get redress for the Hammonds and for other purposes of freedom too.
Well, folks, I want to make it very clear that we talk a lot about the background to this story and the research that's gone into it and all that background information. And I want to challenge each and every one of you to go out there I'm going to include links in my articles and in this video to these different references, these information piles, if you will, that back up everything we're saying. And I want to challenge you to go through it, read it, and understand the backstory that we're talking about here, and really across the board in these western states with each one of these egregious happenings, whether it's a guy in Montana or Wyoming putting a pond in his backyard and being prosecuted as a terrorist there, to the Hammonds, to the Bundys. The information's there, folks, and we need to really bone up on that information and be able to speak intelligently about it. So please take the time, go out there and take the time to read up.
I hope I'm not sure if I completely finished my thought about those that showed up, the militia that showed up and came down and talked to us. Again, I just really want to put out a thank you, because from a distance they make us feel safe here. They don't have to be here on site, but from a distance we feel their support. And so again, to all of the Americans that have prayed for us, and even though they may not have agreed or not quite understand, but we felt their prayers, we have heard and listened to their support and stuff, and we are not stopping. We're not going to back down. We will not, as Ammon said, we will leave not a minute too soon. Okay, so thank you so much.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Awesome.
Stuart Rhodes, founder of Oath Keepers, oathkeepers.org. Organization is exploding. Your military contacts give you the same info we get. Half the military is awake right now. It's accelerating. The enemy is in.
All right.
some ways is a testimony to Charles Koch. He is an engineer who looked at American politics and thought, how do you manufacture change here? What widgets does it need? What do you do? And he's been a terrifically successful businessman, and he's brought the country far in the direction that was considered fringe not that many years ago.
And some of the most surprising participants in the group that you didn't expect would be in the group?
Well, I think it's interesting that these New York finance people are in it, because for the most part they don't share this radical worldview. They just care about wealth accumulation, basically, and you know, I mean, David Koch's involvement himself in this. I mean, he's the wealthiest resident of Manhattan. His name is on every cultural institution here. He travels in circles that are full of open-minded people, yet he's backing this machine that's pushing the country in a direction that I think many Manhattanites might be surprised at.
Jane Mayer, thanks so much for being with us. Author of the new book, Dark Money, The Hidden History of the Billionaires Behind the Rise of the Radical Right. That does it for our broadcast. I'm Amy Goodman with Juan Gonzalez. Our website is democracynow.org. We're hiring a director of finance and operations as well as a development director. Check democracynow.org. Thanks for joining us.
You are listening to KBOO Portland. Coming up next, we'll talk about the Al-Qaeda invasion of the Malheur Wildlife Refuge near Burns, and we'll invite your calls at 503-231-8187. You are listening to KBOO Portland. First, some announcements.
KBOO Community Radio is a proud co-sponsor of the 33rd Real Music Festival running through February 8th. Real Music explores the lively interplay between sound and image and music and culture. Friday, January 22nd, Lee Scratch Perry, Visions of Paradise will be showing. Filmed over 15 years, this film has been described as a fairy tale documentary, an almost impossible to believe portrait of the prophet of the international Rastafari movement, one of the icons of the Black Power movement, and arguably the inventor of Jamaican music as we know it. That's January 22nd at 7 p.m. at the Northwest Film Center in the Witzel Auditorium at 1219 Southwest Park Avenue in Portland. More information of the films and more can be found at kboo.fm on the right side of the homepage under Community Events.
Hey there, my name's Alan Montecillo. On Friday, January 22nd at 11 a.m., you'll hear the first episode of a new show here on KBOO. It's called Pacific Underground. It's a show that'll focus on the stories of Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders right here in Oregon. We'll bring you everything from narrative documentaries to audio essays to performances to interviews with writers and artists. In the end, this show is about handing the mic to Asians and Pacific Islanders from our local communities, like Christopher Rose, a poet who teaches at Portland Community College.
Birth name is Christopher Lee Rose. From what she told me recently, she wanted it to be Christopher Brugada Rose, which Brugada is her family's name, and my dad was like, no, they're American.
On this show, you'll hear Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders loud and clear on the airwaves. Tune in on Friday, January 22nd at 11 a.m. right here on KBOO.
A young cowboy named Billy Joe grew restless on the farm. A boy filled with wanderlust who really meant no harm. He changed his clothes and shined his boots and combed his dark hair down. And his mother cried as he walked out, "Don't take your guns to town, son. Leave your guns at home, Bill. Don't take your guns to town." He laughed and kissed his mom and said, "Your Billy Joe's a man. I can shoot as quick and straight as anybody can. But I wouldn't shoot without a cause, I'd gun nobody down." But she cried again as he rode away, "Don't take your guns to town, son. Leave your guns at home, Bill. Don't take your guns to town." He sang a song his own, he rode, his guns hung at his hips. He rode into a cattle town, a smile upon his lips. He stopped and walked into a bar and laid his money down. But his mother's words echoed again, "Don't take your guns to town, son. Leave your guns at home, Bill. Don't take your guns to town." He drank his first strong liquor then to calm his shaking hand, and tried to tell himself at last he had become a man. A dusty cowpoke at his side began to laugh him down, and he heard again his mother's words, "Don't take your guns to town, son. Leave your guns at home, Bill. Don't take your guns to town." Filled with rage, then Billy Joe reached for his gun to draw. But the stranger drew his gun and fired before he even saw. As Billy Joe fell to the floor, the crowd all gathered round and wondered at his final words, "Don't take your guns to town, son. Leave your guns at home, Bill. Don't take your guns to town."
mic on? There we go. Good morning, everybody. This is Wednesday Talk Radio. I'm Paul Rowland, and of course, that was Johnny Cash. I just couldn't resist opening with that song, talking about this increasingly bewildering, disquieting, somewhat surreal, dangerous situation out in Burns, Oregon, the Malheur Wildlife Refuge. And as Kathleen Stevenson, our morning public affairs director, said, maybe that song should have been "Don't Take Your Stolen Government Vehicle to Town." Anyway, thanks, Kathleen, for that line. So to talk about this issue, I've got a couple guests who were at a very powerful rally at over in the Lloyd district, was in the Holiday Park yesterday, very rainy noontime. And I've got Linda Neal. Good morning, Linda.
Good morning.
And Bob Salinger. Good morning. And so Linda, I've known for many years before I left for Italy, which many of you don't know, but anyway, it was a long time ago, as a environmental activist and as a co-founder of the Earth and Spirit Council here in Portland. And I didn't know that you're from a old homesteading family from Harney County, which I mistakenly said was a ranching family, and there's actually a big difference.
There is a big difference. I don't want any of my ranching friends in Harney County to hear that I'm identified as a rancher, because I'm not.
And we'll talk about that. That's one of the main reasons. You gave a very interesting and powerful talk about your experiences, having that connection, your knowledge of the community out there, and just the divisions that this has opened up. And Bob Salinger with Portland Audubon, and of course Audubon has a long history with the Malheur Wildlife Refuge, and you gave a powerful vision statement about some of the collaborative efforts to protect that area yesterday.
Right. Our history goes back to the founding of Malheur. We were actually founded in 1902 in part to establish the Malheur National Wildlife Refuge, which did occur in 1908. So really our history is intertwined with Malheur for over a century.
So, yeah, I'll have some questions asked you about that too. And of course, the number to call in, let us give us a few minutes to kind of get the conversation started. But the number is always 503-231-8187. And so I talked to you guys after that rally yesterday and asked you to be on this show. Obviously, this is an issue that it's kind of paradoxical, because in a way it's getting too much media attention, because in some ways these people don't necessarily really merit this much media attention. At the same time, it brings up some really crucial issues, that long simmering issues that need to be addressed. So it's kind of a paradoxical sort of thing. So we're going to go into all those aspects and more, and hopefully engage our listeners with a really interesting conversation. So first, Bob, just tell us how this rally came together.
Sure. There were a lot of folks out there that were very concerned about what's happening at Malheur, the armed illegal occupation, which is now, I believe, 19 days old, 20 days old. A lot of energy out there. People care passionately about this place and care passionately about public lands. And seeing those under attack was very, very troubling to a lot of people. So we were hearing from folks, other organizations were hearing from folks that wanted to get out there and express their support for Malheur, their support for public lands, and also their support for the federal employees that work on those lands. And so it came about very organically. There was a phone call about 8-10 days ago. A ton of groups on the call that were interested. Basically, the word went out there was going to be a phone call about having rallies. We got together. We came up with some basic guidelines and some basic themes that we wanted to get across, and then different groups took on rallies in different towns across the Pacific Northwest. So they were in Portland, Salem, Eugene, Seattle. There was one in Boise, really Bend, all over the place. And again, different groups put them together, worked together collaboratively, and put together the speaker lists, and they came off really well. I mean, we had 400 to 500 people in Portland yesterday. 100 plus people in Seattle, really just tons of people turning out. And I think it shows how much the public cares about these places.
And also probably a certain level of frustration that people haven't been able to express themselves. Well, these people go, like you said, 19 days, coming and going and picking up food and getting resupplied and having the power still on and all these things. It seems very strange. And, one of the aspects that, of course, a lot of people talk about, we've talked about on KBOO, is the differential treatment of these particular occupiers as opposed to protesters of other racial, religious, ethnic identities, which is really quite stark. And of course, there's been endless analysis. They don't want another Waco, another Ruby Ridge. It's bringing up a lot of stuff. So Linda, again, you gave a really interesting talk. Talk about your family history in Harney County and why you feel so passionate about this.
Well, my family, my great-grandfather and great-uncle homesteaded in Harney County out near Princeton, which is about 20 miles from refuge headquarters. At the beginning of the 20th century, they were sort of the last wave of homesteaders that came out. And so my grandmother went to a little one-room school out there, and she was part of something called the Sagebrush Orchestra, which later became the Portland Youth Philharmonic. And I've been involved with the Harney County Arts and Education Foundation out there in helping potentially build a performing arts center. My stepfather, David Marshall, was the wildlife biologist under John Scharf, and that John Scharf's, that's what the bird festival is named after him. And David, my stepfather, did a lot of writing about his time on the refuge. And right now they named the pond that's out there in front of the refuge headquarters after him. So it's Marshall Pond. I go out there a lot. Also, we restored my family's homestead back in about 2000. And so we've been living out there, about a third of the time, I would say. Even over Thanksgiving when it was 17 degrees below zero, we were out there. And I have, deep connections and deep caring for the people of Harney County. And I that's one of the big concerns, I think almost the biggest concern that I have is that this occupation and the issues that that have arisen from it are kind of dividing the people out there. I mean, there's a huge majority of people that just want the occupiers to leave. And there are some people that are grateful that some of these issues have come up. And I mean, I was in Arizona on my husband's reservation when this first came out, and I first knew about it by picking up a copy of USA Today and seeing Malheur Wildlife Refuge on the cover of USA Today. It was a little startling. But the fact is, I am grateful. There's some good things that are happening as a result of this, including increased attention to the Burns Paiute tribe out there. And, there's actually many good things that are happening. We're looking forward to Bundy and crew being gone, so we can actually start working on those things.
So they've kind of maybe sort of raised these, like this long simmering sort of thing to kind of the surface where maybe it can be potentially looked at.
Absolutely. That's and there's quite a few people down there. The Harney, I want to just mention the High Desert, what's it called?
Partnership.
High Desert Partnership, right? High Desert Partnership, a good friend of mine, Gary and Georgia Marshall, helped begin that down there, and that's a forum for bringing together different stakeholders from very different perspectives around a given issue, and they helped to create the 15-year refuge plan that's now being supported by just about everybody.
Mm-hmm. So you're just hearing the voice of Linda Neal, again, originally from a family from Harney County, and Bob Salinger with Portland Audubon. And you mentioned, it's basically the time you're talking about, the early 20th century is when Malheur was created. When your family arrived, it seems like a perfect perfect pair of people to talk about this issue. So was Audubon himself out there?
No, John James Audubon was not. But we were formed in 1902, and our first president and founder, William Finley, was a great Northwest naturalist, great wildlife photographer. And he went out to Malheur with his partner, Henry Bowman, and took amazing pictures of the wildlife that was there. In fact, we have this great picture of them traveling across the sagebrush in this old jalopy, and the caption written by Finley on it was, "This trip was what led to the establishment of Malheur." He sent those pictures to Teddy Roosevelt, and what those pictures showed was this incredible wildlife that's there. I mean, this is an incredible place for birds. It also showed the carnage that was going on back then. Plume hunters, folks that killed birds for their feathers and used them in the fashion industry, were killing just massive numbers of birds in places like Klamath and Malheur. And so these pictures really moved Teddy Roosevelt. He met with Finley. There's a great story of him coming to Portland, and you can imagine the bandstand and all the officials waiting for him as he gets off the train. And apparently he got off the train and shouted, "Get me Finley." Went off with Finley, looked at these pictures, and in 1908 established Malheur as one of the first 3 wildlife refuges in the western United States.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's the other part. I really wanted to get one of the Burns Paiute. There's I think 2 or 3 of them there yesterday at the rally, and one spoke, Jarvis Kennedy, right?
Right, he's on the tribal council.
He's on the tribal council, and again, it is, that's some of those small, desert reservations. There's a number of them, Nevada, Oregon, Utah, that are kind of, sort of hidden, and their histories are sort of not well known. And so it's the other, not long before the time period where you guys are talking about in terms of the establishment of Malheur and your family, Linda, coming there, there is a really bad history in terms of the expropriation or the forcible removal of the Burns Paiute, and that's something that's really coming up, publicly for maybe like the first time in, I don't know, in the way it is now. I mean, they're actually gaining some voice. So that's another kind of ironic effect of this issue, and so that's something I'd like to talk about. But we've had a caller waiting since early on, so let's go to that first caller. Eric, you're on the air.
Hi, good morning. This is a good subject. I kind of want to think of the idea that this kind of is a privatization of the land so that the Chinese can come and invest in all of our land here in Oregon, and while their stock market is crashing. There must be some kind of organization out there that's looking at this as a land grab.
This is Bob. I think a lot of folks are looking at this as a land grab. The folks that are occupying Malheur have come up with a variety of pretexts for why they're there, but the overriding theme is give the land back to private landowners. And, this is a movement that's occurring in other places as well, very, very far-right, radical, extreme movement to eliminate our public lands, which is part of the great legacy and heritage of this country, our national parks, our wilderness areas, our national forests, and our wildlife refuges. This is really a heritage that belongs to us all. And I think there's a bigger context in which this has to be viewed. I mean, it's immediately a threat to Malheur, but it's also an existential threat to public lands at large. I think the good news is that people of this country overwhelmingly reject that notion. They value these lands tremendously. It's been tested in court repeatedly, and the Supreme Court has repeatedly found that the government does have the ability, the constitutional right to own these lands. And so, I think these folks are making a lot of noise and getting a lot of attention right now. What the rallies yesterday were about were giving people the opportunity to counteract that and really speak out about how valuable and important these lands are. And I love the juxtaposition of people on that stage. We had Linda there, who was, a family that goes way back in Harney County. We had the Paiute Nation there, Jarvis Kennedy. We had Earl Blumenauer's staff, the steelheaders, conservation groups. Really, across the spectrum, people care about these places and value them, and came together yesterday to express that.
I'd like to say something about the rhetoric that's coming out of from the occupiers, because they first started saying that they wanted to return the land to the original owners, who were this ranchers, the loggers, and the miners. And then the Paiutes actually had a meeting and said, "Hey, wait a minute, we were here, and now they're saying they want to turn it to the previous owners." So they are completely denying that the Paiutes even have a claim to that land, and they are the ones that have been there for centuries and centuries.
Looks like we have a full slate of callers. Before going to our next caller, I just want to piggyback off that. This article, there's so much been coming. There's so many fascinating perspectives and really deep, well thought out perspectives that are coming out, on the internet and various publications about this. And one of them, Ryan Bundy, Native Americans have lost their claim to the land. Going back to the skirmish in Nevada a couple of years ago, where some of the people involved in that at the Bundy Ranch drove their ATVs through some Native American, I believe, burial site, certainly a sacred area, and without any concern at all. And then I guess Ryan Bundy was quoted as saying, "We also recognize that the Native Americans had the claim to the land, but they lost that claim. There are things to learn from cultures of the past, but the current culture is the most important." This whole idea, this again, that brings up some really deep stuff. The whole idea that, to the victor belong the spoils, that, it's terrible what happened to the Native Americans, but get over it. All these, scratch the surface, and it's not just the Bundy crowd that actually thinks these things. I think it's actually more widespread than would actually like to believe. So maybe it's a good thing that this issue is coming up, and that, the Paiutes finally can talk about how they got, 25-acre X dump or whatever in place of this, millions of acres of just beautiful, beautiful land where they lived for eons. But let's go to our next caller. Camilo, you're on the air.
Good morning. I have a question about the opposition strategy, because it's clear that the law enforcement, particularly federal, are not going to do anything to recreate, embarrassing situations where they really lost the public relations fight. And that is, since we cannot confront them directly, I think that we should be able to confront the attorney for the federal government in the area, and at least have the attorney explain why they have not prepared indictments, why they're not going to be prosecuted under RICO. It clearly is a conspiracy. And I wonder if we could identify who that person is, where they are, and have a rally there and say, you need to come out and say, why are you not doing something about this, as you have done in other examples?
So this is Linda, and I think that I've begun to believe that there actually is a strategy that's going on, and I think that the law enforcement, I know the county commissioners and the people there that are involved in local law enforcement are trying to be there's trying to have a coordinated approach. And right now, if you go down to Burns, the courthouse and the sheriff's office, there's barricades up all around it. They don't allow anybody to come and go. There is a lot of fear. There's still a lot of fear. I was thinking about that song that was played, the Johnny Cash song. We don't want to have what happened in that Johnny Cash song happen down there. So I believe that there is some kind of coordinated approach that's going on. The people down there seem to believe that also. The FBI drives around in their big Suburbans and just like out of the movies, sunglasses and whatever. But they've taken over the airport. So I think that there is some kind of coordinated approach, and I'm beginning to. This is just me personally. I'm beginning to feel like there is some wisdom in going slow like this. I don't think it can go on forever, however.
Yeah, if I could jump in too. We certainly feel that frustration, and we hear from many, many people that feel that frustration. And I think part of that is driven by lack of information. I do wish the federal government would do a much better job of communicating with the public about what's going on, and the communication strategy, in my opinion, has been very, very lacking. Even if they get up daily and tell you that they can't talk about what's going on, at least to see them and have a chance to ask some questions would be helpful. It's also very frustrating that the Bundys were not prosecuted for their previous crimes. They've run their cattle on public lands, run up bills of over $1 million over the course of 20 years, refused to pay those, and when the government tried to collect, they had an armed standoff, and some of those folks bragged about having federal agents in their sniper sights. And they weren't prosecuted, and I think that has emboldened them to do what they're doing now at Malheur. At the same time, we want to be respectful of the federal strategy. We don't want a violent end to this. I think the fact that the community is speaking out so strongly against them, there was a meeting last night where the community spoke very, very powerfully about not wanting these folks there. Regardless of issues, that they don't belong there, that what they're doing is illegal and divisive. And so, I would preach a little bit of patience. At the same time, we want this to end. We want it to end expeditiously, and we absolutely want to see these guys prosecuted to the full extent of the law. They should not be allowed to get away with this. There should be no deals cut where they get to walk free because they leave. They went in there with guns. It's an armed occupation. They have made threats. They have intimidated people. They have destroyed public property. They've destroyed wildlife habitat. They've broken into government records. That should lead to very long jail sentences.
And the people are, some people have been followed. People's tires have been slashed. There's a lot of tension. I think people are. The local people are. In fact, there was a statement released this morning, I believe, from the staff of the refuge, which I was happy to see, and that their statement ended up by saying, "We are Harney County."
Well, I'm glad to hear that there is a strategy, and I agree it's wise to be patient, but I think the time should come when, if we don't see that prosecution is going forward, that we need to challenge the law enforcement on that.
I would encourage people to make that statement right now, really. And the way to do that is to contact your elected officials, contact the Oregon delegation or wherever you are, and ask our elected officials to speak out on behalf of Malheur and the illegal occupation and what they think about that, to speak out on the value of public lands, and to demand real prosecution on this thing. I think that can happen right now. I also think writing letters to the editor, writing op-eds, coming out to rallies, that kind of stuff is really important. It's very important right now that everybody sees how important these lands are to the public.
Thank you, Camilo. We've got a couple other callers. Hold off just a couple seconds here. There's so many ironies and paradoxes in this. One of them, as someone who, was pretty heavily involved in the forest or timber wars of the 80s, 90s, we certainly never saw the federal government as on our side. In fact, their land management policies were exactly the reason why we were risking arrest and climbing trees and, being in front of bulldozers and all that stuff that really got the issue on the map. And of course, the allowing of rampant cattle grazing in the West and leading to massive, increased desertification, despoiling of the water, decline of the salmon, are all issues that certainly haven't gone away. So it's kind of ironic that, people are calling, for the federal government, in this case, rightfully so, who else is going to do it? But I would like to point out the irony in the situation, and also, one thing that I've been thinking about a lot is, back in the, you mentioned the Sagebrush Orchestra or whatever, the Sagebrush Rebellion is kind of in some ways what kicked a lot of this madness off back in 1979. This idea that the federal land should go back to the counties or private ownership, and people should be free to do whatever they want, and all that. And there's a fair amount of corporate involvement because there's a lot of resources to be still extracted if they are allowed from these federal lands. And so at the same time as Earth First, which I was involved in, was fighting against the Forest Service and the BLM on various issues, that they were being squeezed from the other side, and being physically threatened and intimidated in various places around the West. So I really hadn't really come to grips with that reality that being a federal land manager at that time must have been a very difficult thing.
Well, I think there's a difference though here, and I think we're very supportive of nonviolent political protest. That's an important part of the tradition of this country, and that is very different than what's going on here. This is a violent takeover. They haven't hurt anybody yet, but they have certainly threatened to do that. The same people have bragged about, having federal agents in their sniper sites. That is absolutely unacceptable. They're going in and destroying public property, destroying wildlife habitat. This is a very, very different thing than a nonviolent political protest and nonviolent civil disobedience. And I think, whether you're on the left or the right, when you go in and you start practicing violence, when you start practicing terrorism, that becomes unacceptable, and it is appropriate to ask the government to step in. I don't think anybody in the environmental community is saying we agree with the government all the time. We don't. We disagree with them often. Making threats against federal agents, though, is absolutely unacceptable. Find a nonviolent way to make your point, be part of the political tradition of this country. Don't go in there with guns.
Let's go to our next caller. Sean, go ahead. You're on the air.
Hey, good morning. Well, listen, I just wanted to say that Bob answered a lot. Mr. Salinger asked a lot of what I was calling about, and that was, I think the biggest thing, what has really been curious about this is, number one, is the silence of the federal government. And I think it has to do with what I believe is a historically incestuous relationship with the kind of people that the Bundys are and the Hammonds. And what I mean is I've found it really more than ironic, if you want to use the word, that the Bundys owe over $1 million in grazing fees and penalties, but the government has not forced them to pay that. Now, if that was you and I, you can bet the IRS would be breathing down our necks. But also that the Hammonds, at least 20 years ago, literally have made death threats and threats of injury against rangers' own families. The government initially simply placed misdemeanor charges, which were then dropped for death threats against federal employees. So they have basically been allowed, and as he said, what kind of message does that send across to them and to anybody else? And I think part of the relationship, too, is that, is that I think there's something to be said about how there is a history of militias have actually helped the federal government put down leftist uprisings in the past, and that a lot of this has to do with private property rights, the right to bear arms, and also, as you mentioned earlier, comments about American exceptionalism and how the federal government was kind of founded on those things. So I think there's kind of a real twisted relationship in all of this.
So I this is Linda, and I just wanted to tell you that there are a lot of people in Harney County that would disagree with you, that there is a incestuous relationship between the federal government and private property people, no matter who they are. If that's what you were implying, there's a lot of tension. There has been a lot of tension between the ranchers and it's gotten a lot better in the last 20 years. It's gotten a lot better, but there were, and I appreciate what Bob was saying about communication, because there was a time where there was not very much communication between the range officers and the federal government, and it was very, very confrontive, and it has gotten a lot better, but people still remember that. People still remember it.
Yeah. Let me shift to something positive here, though, because I think it's easy to get into a lot of theories about why what's happening is happening, and there's a lot that's invisible to all of us right now. One thing I really want to capture while we have some time, though, is the progress that Linda's talking about, because Harney County right now is being exploited for these historic divisions. These folks have come in from out of state and tried to exploit historic divisions. They've been looking desperately for a wedge, whether it was the Hammonds, whether it's public lands. Paul talked earlier about this. No one should also forget that there are also real connections to the white supremacist movement among these individuals as well. These are really, really divisive folks, and that's what they're trying to sow is division. But Harney County and Malheur in particular ought to be known for something different, and that's actually some incredible collaboration and consensus that's been established. Every refuge in the United States has to do a long-term strategic plan. Most of them do a very cursory process. Malheur was the lone exception. They agreed at the request of ranchers and environmentalists and county commissioners that came together several years ago, the High Desert Partnership, to do a collaborative consensus-based process. And for 3 years, ranchers, county commissioners, the Paiutes, conservation groups went over Harney County, those of us that lived outside of it, over and over and over again, and met at the refuge, met in town, worked through issues. We don't agree on everything, but we actually achieved a true consensus about the refuge and how it goes forward. And in my opinion, it's one of the most important projects in the western United States from an ecological perspective. It's also one of the most important projects from a collaborative perspective, because we've been working together even after the government adopted the plan. We stayed together. We continue to meet. We continue to write grants together, do projects together, on and off the refuge. And so there's some incredible collaboration going on there. And
Sure. And I'll just, I'll be done my last remark. And that is, I agree with, I think the consensus is a fantastic historical landmark in that regard. And to, I'm sorry, the other gal, the guest, is
Linda.
I'm sorry, Linda. And that is, I'm not specifically targeting Harney County or saying a broad spectrum. I am really more talking about the Bundys and the Hammonds and the like, and also this whole issue of like what they did to the Shoshone land in Nevada by, dishonoring it, let's put it that way. And that is that I think that they, specifically, folks like them, do, if you go back into the historical record, they do reflect, the people who, let's say, founded this country in terms of what they wanted, based upon over subduing the Indians, private property, the right to bear arms, and the way that they viewed white supremacy as manifest destiny. And so I'm not talking Harney County or just in general, but specifically these kind of folks do represent a lot of what this country was founded on. And I think that there's a very uncomfortable energy that resides there, which is part of the reason why I believe the federal government has also not brought charges, is because, to a degree, they understand and relate to that very thing. So that's my comment, but thanks.
Well, I'm not. I think what you're saying may have some validity in some places, but I think it's a very general statement too. There are certainly very troubling strains that go back throughout our history and are still current today, and there's no question about that. And I think we should continue to put pressure on the government to prosecute these things and take them very seriously. And I think we're all trying to do that right now. I do think, though, that I want to spend some time on that collaboration, though, because I think that's how we're going to go forward from here. And I want to really call out the fact that Harney County has rejected these folks. Now, there are some folks that are saying, look, we agree with some of their issues, but they have resoundingly said, this illegal occupation is not okay. And so, I think that's the most powerful image of all. If these folks leave Harney County because they were rejected by the local community, these tactics are not acceptable, and you need to leave. I think the term last night was get the hell out. That's going to be the most powerful repudiation of much of what you're talking about. And then we're going to get back to having the dialogue that was already ongoing and is ongoing right now, even though this occupation is occurring, about how we move forward together. And that includes the ranchers and the Paiutes and the conservation groups and the federal lands. And we will disagree, and there will be lawsuits, but we're going to do it civilly. We're going to do it respectfully. And I think we're going to make some real progress. And maybe this is going to be a catalyst for some of that, because a lot of people weren't paying attention to the good stuff that was going on out there. It wasn't being nurtured. Maybe now people are going to realize how important that is. And I hope we get to exactly the kinds of historic issues and current issues that you're talking about. It was really powerful and really important yesterday that the Paiutes came across the state to talk at this rally in Portland and to be part of that discussion yesterday. And it's really important that they were part of the discussions about the refuge long-term management plan, and that they have spoken out and said, we value this refuge. It's the federal government that's protecting our artifacts now. And to point out that they were the original owners of this land, and if there's inequity here, they are the ones that have suffered it, clearly.
And they still consider themselves to be the custodians of that land. It doesn't matter who's sitting on it. They, their ancestors are buried there. There's much that they have. And I just wanted to say that I totally agree with Bob. This country was founded on many principles and many ideals, and one of those has to do with listening to a lot of voices. And you can debate that, I know, but at least that's where we are now.
Okay, and you're listening to KBOO Community Radio. This is Wednesday Talk Radio. I'm Paul Rowland, here every Wednesday morning from 8 to 9. And, of course, you can hear Talk Radio every weekday morning from 8 to 9 with a variety of interesting perspectives, hosts, guests. And I urge you to check all of them out. And we are talking about the Malheur crisis. And I actually had titled this, What's at Stake? And so we've actually gotten into that a fair amount. I hope in the last 15 minutes we can touch on a few other points. As usual, time is running out. The number is 503-231-8187. If you want to get in, better do it right now. Don't call with 5 minutes to go, please. Let's hear from Johnny.
Hey, how's it going? Johnny here. So, first of all, I'd like to give a big shout out to you, Paul, and the guests, and all of the KU staff and volunteers, and all of the good peoples down there in Harney County and throughout the rest of Oregon for keeping a watchful eye on our wildlife refuges. I grew up in Klamath Falls. I'm in Portland right now. Of course, I fell in love with Portland. I've been here for 24 years, but I've seen stuff like this, kind of growing up throughout my childhood, different peoples making different demands. And of course, I think we're all familiar with the Klamath and Modoc reservations and the stronghold, the Captain Jack stronghold down there. However, what I would really like to bring into position here is the direct inconsistencies in the federal government and the militia themselves, and how odd their behavior is, and just how uniquely unprecedented it seems like they are floating around on these whimsical ideas of why they're there, and the feds are kind of whimsically just there too. So I'd also like to point out in America's past, within the branch of the United States corporate's office, I guess you could say, has the entity of corporation. There's a long-standing history of natural and man-made disasters that coincide with the structure of corporations getting copyrights over land rights and over water rights, or trying to at least, for 50 some odd years. And so my question to the visitors today, Paul, is that what's the likelihood that this is like an organized distraction, like an elaborate organized distraction to keep us from looking at really, not to say that Harney County and the folks down there and their land and the culture of the Paiute tribe that are from there isn't important, but there are other important things that are going on today too, like the Trans-Pacific Partnership. And what's the likelihood of this being, like a big distraction, and they are just pulling as many strings as they can and getting as many people in an uproar as possible? What's the likelihood of that?
I'm not sure who you're referring to as they, but
as the government and the militia together, because you have, obviously, there's out-of-staters there that have no stake really, except for their ego, and so
well,
like,
they have a belief system, and I think that's one of the things that hasn't been in the press very much is the belief system of the Bundys, etc. That and the it comes from a religious belief. Eamon Bundy has said that God told him to go in there and do this. So we have to... yeah, right. Anyway, so I think that it's... My own opinion is that it's pretty unlikely. You can say, Bob can say what he thinks. I think this is just more of the same from this group of people.
Heavy ego.
Okay, I think it's hard to imagine that this is really a well thought out conspiracy, because if it is, it's pretty poorly planned. And I think these guys are, in some ways, the best example of how asinine this is. They're not good spokespeople for the issues that they're trying to raise. They're going out and cutting down fences that the ranchers are putting back up. They're being told by the community to leave. They're just making asses out of themselves, and they are a distraction, absolutely. But the world keeps turning, and people are still working on other issues that are important. So I don't see a fall off in terms of, people focusing on other really important issues, because we're all focused on Harney County. For those of us that work on public lands and who care about public lands and who care about Malheur, we're absolutely diverting resources to this. But those other issues are getting addressed as well. And, I think in the end, these folks are going to leave. It may take some time, but they're going to leave. They're going to be rejected by pretty much everybody across the spectrum. And we're going to move forward. We're going to be stronger when we do.
Okay, I just want to jump in. You mentioned other issues, and thank you for your call. I mean, that's just something I've heard other people talk about, and it's good to get it out there. I mean, in the end, who knows? Maybe it'll all come out that, there was secret funding from the Koch brothers for this, or who knows? It's all possible. But their actions do seem to not be the most clearly thought out. I guess the only thing I would say is that, if there is sort of a quote conspiracy or something, it's almost like it's kind of it's eerily ironic that it is precisely in a moment where there does seem to be better relations between the various parties that they've come in to be divisive. So maybe they did know about that. Maybe it rankled with them that, who knows?
They seem shockingly unaware of their surroundings. I mean, maybe this is all a grand facade, but But at the end of the day, you know, they were talking originally about giving the trees back to the timber industry.
Right.
They didn't seem to realize that Malheur doesn't have a whole lot of trees. That, you know, that's the Malheur National Forest, which is somewhere else. You know, I think these guys picked a target of opportunity. That's my take. I mean, no one knows. We'll find out if there's big money behind them or what else is going on. I think certainly there are people that are using the Bundys as an opportunity to push a bigger agenda, and there is some synchronicity there. Certainly, the Bundy standoff a year ago has been latched onto by some extremist groups as well. So, you know, I think the way we're going to fight that is by organizing and standing up for our public lands and letting people know how important they are. We want them taken care of. We want them protected for the public. We want them managed well. And we don't want them turned over to private interests or the extraction industries.
Okay, what I was getting at was there are some other issues that I had meant to mention at the outset, which I will do now since we only have a few minutes left. So this evening, a really important event at the 18th Avenue Peace House, 2116 Northeast 18th Avenue. There's a report back from the climate talks in Paris, and it's at 7 o'clock, and there will be Jill Stein, Green Party presidential candidate, Marlena Murphy of Portland Rising Tide, Terry Light of Right to Survive, and Virginia Wiseman, who reports on environmental negotiations and conferences with the International Institute for Sustainable Development's Earth Negotiations Bulletin, co-hosted by Portland Central America Solidarity Committee, Right to Survive, and 350 PDX. So that's this evening at the 18th Avenue Peace House, 2116 Northeast 18th Avenue. Tomorrow, an important hearing with the Multnomah County Commission, who is going to be introducing a resolution, or the Commissioner Jules Bailey opposing oil trains next week. And people are being asked to come to a hearing tomorrow, the morning of January 21st. And of course, that's at the Multnomah County Building, 501 Southeast Hawthorne. That's Thursday, January 21, 9:30 a.m. The meeting begins. And you can testify. You can also email your county chair or other commissioners. And I will put that up on the page for this program afterwards. You can also look up that information. It is public. Also, this Saturday, January 30th, or maybe that's next Saturday. Never mind. I'll talk about that next week. If there's a Portland Tenants United open house and work party at the Lucky Labrador, Saturday, January 30, 12 to 3 p.m. I'll talk about that next week. Linda, did you want to respond to any of those calls before we go to our next caller? Let's just go to our next caller.
Yeah, let's go to the next caller.
Willow, go ahead. You're on the air.
Hello. Hello, Linda.
Hi, Willow.
Hi. I've been listening to a lot of this, most of this conversation, and I thought I didn't really have anything to say, but then I thought about the time I've spent out on the homestead and out in the prairie and around. I've been to Malheur. I've sat in the weeds and watched the birds, and I also grew up in this country in Oregon and watched things disintegrate out in the countryside. I'm going to be third generation Oregonian here, maybe fourth. And
we only have a couple minutes left.
Okay, my family were farmers, and I'm concerned about what's happening at Malheur and how that might slow down and maybe stop the beautiful things that are going on there to protect the land. Mm-hmm. And I'd like to see more positive stuff about what's going on the land and getting these guys out of there without so much time sitting with it.
Willow, I think that we all want to see that. I think that we all want to see that, and there's again, I think the quickest way to resolve this is what Bob has said, to really send emails, etc., and let our congressional delegation and every person in the government know that it's not okay that we're just sitting here twiddling our thumbs, or it feels like that sometimes. I think we need to do, I've felt a need to do something. You know, it just is, it's very frustrating for the people that live there, for the people that care about that place, to see what appears to be happening. But the other thing I would say again is that underneath that, I think that there's a lot of hope. There is a lot of hope that that good things eventually are going to come out of this, that people are going to get together, that the High Desert Partnership is going to go to work, and as Rod says, as you know, Willow, we need to learn to listen and listen to learn.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, thank you very much for calling. I appreciate that. I'm going to have to let you go. We're right down to the wire. Let's go to one last caller real quick, Jack, if you could be extremely succinct.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if anybody there has given any thought to, not entirely, but somewhat parallel event last summer, the people who illegally hung from the bridge on St. John's. Of course, they didn't threaten anybody with guns. I'm not saying it's total parallel, but they were allowed to hang there for several days without law enforcement doing anything. And I'm just curious if this has been examined by comparison at all. That's all.
Thank you.
I think it's a good point. I think peaceful, nonviolent protest, civil disobedience is part of the tradition of this country. It's a very important part of it. It's how we've made some of our most important progress forward over some of our most difficult social issues. And that needs to be allowed. This is different. This is an armed occupation, destruction of public property, intimidation, threats of violence. That's a very different thing, and it needs to be dealt with differently. And I don't think we should confuse the two. I think we need to be very clear about the difference between nonviolent civil disobedience and violent intimidation and threats.
And I can guarantee you, if that demonstration had gone on any longer, you would have seen a heavy. I mean, they were interrupting commercial traffic on the Willamette River. Can't have that. So yeah, would have seen some really much heavier force come to play. And of course, we've seen much heavier force come into play in much less grievous assaults on our institutions, if they were done by the people like African Americans, like Native Americans, the American Indian movement, and others. We are flush out of time here. I'm just so sorry. We'd like to go on for hours and hours. I'm going to link to a lot of really interesting articles, like when the feds forcibly removed black occupiers from a wildlife refuge in Georgia in 1979. So go to my site. Any last words?
Thank you. Thank you for doing this,
And
Paul.
thank you.
I appreciate it.
I appreciate you having us on as well. Thank you.
All right. Thank you all so much. And really glad to have you on. So thanks to everybody for listening. Sorry I couldn't get all the callers on. Stay tuned for Political Perspectives here on KBOO. More great programming and Johnny Cash.
He sang a song as on he rode, his guns hung at his hips. He rode into a cattle town, a smile upon his lips. He stopped and walked into a bar and laid
Real Music explores the lively interplay between sound and image and music and culture. Friday, January 22nd, Lee Scratch Perry, Visions of Paradise will be showing. Filmed over 15 years, this film has been described as a fairy tale documentary, an almost impossible to believe portrait of the prophet of the international Rastafari movement, one of the icons of the Black Power movement, and arguably the inventor of Jamaican music as we know it. That's January 22nd at 7 p.m. at the Northwest Film Center in the Witzel Auditorium at 1219 Southwest Park Avenue in Portland. More information of the films and more can be found at kboo.fm on the right side of the homepage under Community Events. Want to connect KBOO on your smartphone? Now you can with the free KBOO mobile app available for both iPhones and Android devices. Real Music explores the lively interplay between sound and image and music and culture. Friday, January 22nd, Lee Scratch Perry, Visions of Paradise will be showing. Filmed over 15 years, this film has been described as a fairy tale documentary, an almost impossible to believe portrait of the prophet of the international Rastafari movement, one of the
Find more information on kpfa.org for January 26th. Kevin Powell.
And you are listening to 94.1 KPFA and 89.3 KPFB in Berkeley, 88.1 KFCF in Fresno, 97.5 K248BR in Santa Cruz, and online at kpfa.org. The time is 4 p.m. Stay tuned next for Hard Knock Radio.
1, 2, 3, 4. Y'all ready for this? Ladies and gentlemen. 94.1
What you see here is history. It's history. Never been done before. Never been done in this country. In this country. But I tell you today, rabbit hunting is fun. When the rabbits stop running and start fighting back.
KPFA.
What up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Hard Knock Radio. Davey D hanging out with you this afternoon. On today's show, we tackle key issues of the day. That's right, it's news, views, and hip-hop. All that and more coming up after the afternoon headlines.
I'm Mark Miracle with KPFA News Headlines. The Supreme Court stepped into a boiling political dispute over immigration today, setting up a likely decision in the middle of a presidential campaign marked by harsh rhetoric about immigrants. The justices agreed to review whether President Barack Obama, acting without congressional approval, has the power to shield from deportation up to 5 million immigrants living in the United States without documents and make them eligible to work without fear of being rounded up. Underscoring the political dimension, the case will be argued in April and decided by late June, about a month before both political parties gather for their nominating conventions. If Obama prevails against opponents led by Republican governors, there would be roughly 7 months left in his presidency to implement plans that would affect the parents of U.S. citizens and lawful permanent residents, as well as some people who arrived in the United States before they turned 16. The Supreme Court justices rejected another challenge to the federal health law known as Obamacare. The justices left in place lower court rulings that dismissed a lawsuit against the national health care law. That suit argued that the law violates the provision of the Constitution that requires tax-raising bills to originate in the House of Representatives. The Supreme Court refused to revive an Arkansas law that would have banned abortions after the 12th week of pregnancy if doctors could detect a fetal heartbeat. Arkansas was appealing lower court rulings that struck the law down. Lieutenant Governor Gavin Newsom and San Francisco Mayor Ed Lee joined healthcare workers and others to submit thousands of voter signatures to qualify a ballot initiative to raise California's minimum wage to $15 an hour. The Fair Wage Act of 2016 would raise the state's minimum wage to $11 in 2017 and then gradually increase it $1 a year until it reaches $15 an hour in 2021. Once the minimum wage reaches that mark, it will automatically be adjusted each year to keep pace with the cost of living. Proponents of a voter initiative to restrict public pensions in California say they will no longer try to get a measure on the ballot this year. Former San Jose Mayor Chuck Reed and former San Diego Councilman Carl DeMaio said they will instead pursue a ballot measure in November of 2018.
On the KPFA website for February 3rd, Lawrence Ross.
You're listening to 94.1 KPFA 89.
on the KPFA website for February 3rd.
Regional government denied the allegations.
There is a new strategy planned by KRG to destroy or destruct any component villages, any component setup in these newly liberated areas.
As for the forced displacement of Arabs, Zabari said the coalition had requested civilians to be kept away from areas close to the front line, and that Kurds too were prevented from returning to some recaptured villages for their own safety. Sierra Leone confirmed a new case of Ebola today, its second in less than a week, marking a further setback in efforts to end a 2-year West African epidemic that has killed more than 11,000 people. A health official says the new patient is a 38-year-old woman, a relative who had helped care for an earlier victim who died from the disease on January 12. Legislation will be introduced at the San Francisco Board of Supervisors meeting next week, demanding that the city renegotiate its contract with the National Football League for hosting Super Bowl 50 due to rising costs. The move stems from a budget and legislative analyst report last week warning that taxpayers could be on the hook for nearly $5 million in expenses, up from around $4 million estimated by Mayor Ed Lee's office. The city currently faces a $100 million budget deficit. Supervisor John Avalos co-sponsored the legislation. He accused Mayor Lee of giving out corporate subsidies by not getting the NFL to foot more of the bill. He also accused the mayor of cutting the deal in secret, saying Lee had only recently released cost estimates. Oregon's governor is frustrated with the federal government's handling of the occupations of National Wildlife Refuge by an armed group. Governor Kate Brown says the government needs to end the occupation quickly and hold all of the wrongdoers accountable. Brown also says the government needs to pick up state expenses because of the siege. The solar system may host a 9th planet that is about 10 times bigger than Earth and orbiting far beyond Neptune. That's according to research published today by astronomers at the California Institute of Technology in Pasadena. Computer simulations show that the mystery planet, if it exists, would orbit more than 50 times farther from the sun than Earth. So far, the planet has not been observed directly. I'm Cameron Jones. We'll have these stories and more on the Pacifica Evening News at 6. Stay tuned now for Hard Knock Radio.
Yo, this is M1 from Dead Prayers. Hey, what's up? This is Boots from the Coop. Nah, I mean, telling you to stay tuned to Hard Knock Radio. Keep it locked.
On the move, this is Pam Africa on Hard Knock Radio, the station of resistance. Down with this rotten ass system.
Yo, check this out. Hard Knock Radio coming at you, bringing the noise. This is Chuck D, Public Enemy #1. News, views, and hip hop.
Peace and love. This is Azim. And you're listening to Hard Knock Radio, real radio, from the concrete up all the way to the sun. Keep shining, y'all. One love.
What's up, folks? This is your girl, Femi, representing the whole Bay Area. I'm here on Hard Knock Radio, news, views, and hip-hop. Stay tuned.
And again, you're tuned to Hard Knock here on the Pacifica Network. Sunday morning in San Francisco, California, members of the Anti-Police Terror Project and Asians for Black Lives, a Bay Area group of Asian community organizers, held a community intervention in front of Ed Lee's home to demand that he fire Police Chief Sir and all officers involved in the murders of Mario Woods, Amilcar Lopez, and Alex Nieto, as well as the immediate reallocation of city funds in order to provide affordable housing that allows Black, brown, and other people of color to remain in San Francisco. At 6 a.m., activists woke the mayor with drums, gongs, chants, and verbal indictments of his political policy and moral complacency that has placed the city's Black and brown populations at increased risk. 5 activists chained themselves to a table in front of his house, calling on Lee to honor Martin Luther King Jr.'s radical legacy by coming to the table to join them and standing with the Black Lives Matter movement.
People left us say no to war, we're fighters, won't take it no more. People left us say no to war, we're fighters, won't take it no more. Say rise up, rise up, rise up.
My Asian brother police officers in front of me?
Rise up, rise up, rise up.
Rise up, my people rise up.
Say rise up, rise up, rise up. Rise up, my people rise up. Rise up, rise up, rise up. Rise up, my people rise up. Rise up, and we 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 rise up. There, rise up, rise up, rise up. Rise up, rise up, rise up. Tell me what you want, what you really want. Justice. Tell me what you need, what you really need. Justice. How we gonna get it? People power. How we gonna get it? People power. Tell me what you want, what you really want. Justice.
Knocking the door of our neighbors.
You can give it to me.
I'd like to leave it on his door, actually.
You can give it to me, I can leave it on his door.
I'd like to give it to him directly.
Yeah.
People power.
Well, so are you saying that Ed won't meet with us?
I don't know what the mayor's going to do.
Yeah, so why don't you let us knock on the door?
You're not going to go up there. I'm sorry.
So...
You can demonstrate right there. That's fine.
But we want to talk to him. We want to talk to Ed. We want to see what he has to say.
I'm not going to argue or...
knock on the door? No, I'm just asking, is it illegal to knock on the door?
We're not going to let you guys go up, so...
No, she's going up by herself. We're not going to demonstrate on the doorstep. It's not an argument, sir. It's not an argument. It's just a simple question. What is illegal about ringing the doorbell? How can you legally stop her? How can you legally stop her?
But under what law can she not go up? What law are you citing that states she cannot go knock on that door?
A statute, a misdemeanor, an infraction, any type of anything that would say that's illegal.
It's not private security for Mayor Ed Lee. So why can't she knock on the door? Oh, there is no legal statute for why she can't knock on the door.
That's why he's not going to argue.
Mike check!
Mike check!
Ring the doorbell.
As fellow Chinese Americans, we're concerned about budget policies and dangerous people in power Ed Lee you continue to protect that contribute to the murder and displacement of black and brown lives in San Francisco.
This is your wake-up call, Ed, to reconnect with your radical roots on this reclaimed MLK weekend. Are you going to stand with us as Asians for Black Lives on the side with justice? Are you going to have some delicious breakfast we prepared? We got some jokes. We got some yaoqiu. Because these are the food of the people, and we want you to come out and have breakfast with us and talk about why you keep standing to protect the rich and the racists in San Francisco that continue to murder and push out black folks, African-American folks, low-income working-class folks of color, our Chinese Americans, all of us who made San Francisco so great and keep pushing us out.
Mike check!
Mike check!
Ed Lee, if you are not going to have breakfast, you are sending a clear message that you will continue protecting murderers, the SFPD that stands in front of your door as your private security. You will continue to work for rich and the racist by trading the people, the lives, and the people of San Francisco. If you don't come outside to meet with us, we will not let you comfortably sleep while black and brown lives are evicted, homeless, incarcerated, and murdered. Wake up, Ed Lee. Blood has been shed.
Wake up, Ed Lee.
Blood has been shed.
Wake up, Ed Lee. Blood has been shed.
Wake up, Ed Lee.
Blood has been shed.
Wake up, Ed Lee.
Blood has been shed.
A statement released by the group Agents for Black Lives read, quote, "From gentrification to police terrorism, there is a war on black lives happening in San Francisco and across the nation. As Asian Americans, we refuse to be complicit in the violence that John's decisions have committed against our black siblings. We are ashamed that the first Asian American mayor of San Francisco is acting as a general in this war," end quote. Early that morning, I spoke with Albina Wong, one of the protesters that attempted to present Mayor Lee with a menu list of demands. Here are her accounts of what happened when she and other peaceful organizers tried to approach the steps leading up to the San Francisco mayor's home.
So my comrade and I, Mabel, were trying to just nicely knock on his door, wake him up, invite him to the breakfast, but we were stopped by a blockade, a fence of, I guess, Mayor Lee's private security, also known as SFPD, who won't let us even walk up to his door. We have this nice little letter to explain why we're here today and also to really explain our demands today.
What are the particular demands?
So we want him to fire Chief Sir. We want him to terminate the officers, any officers involved with the murders of Mario Woods, Amilcar Lopez, and Alex Nieto. And we want him to reallocate city budgets to affordable housing for black and brown folks.
Can you also name the various organizations that have gathered this morning to come out in support of the particular demands, as well as Black Lives Matter, and to end police terrorism, not just here in San Francisco, but throughout the country?
So we're here with Agents for Black Lives answering the call from Anti-Police Terror Project to organize our own action to highlight these issues that are coming up in the Bay Area. So we are also joined here with our friends from APTP as well as Black Seed and a lot of individual activists and a lot of other folks who also know that Mayor Ed Lee is responsible for all of these murders and also evictions of black folks from San Francisco.
Now, I have a couple more questions. The wake-up protest at Mayor Lee's home this morning is one of many demonstrations happening throughout this country this weekend as part of the 96-hour MLK call to action activities. Specifically, explain why MLK weekend was chosen.
We're really reclaiming MLK weekend. You know, the narrative that MLK was a nonviolent activist and didn't actually challenge struggles is easy for white America to accept and say that this was a peaceful leader. But we also need to remember his history of radicalism that fought against these racist policies. And what was civil disobedience, like sitting at the lunch table years ago, is what we're doing here now, and reclaiming that history and retelling that story, that this is also a part of our history of fighting back.
Something you said when I asked you the question of the particular demands, you mentioned Mario Woods. You mentioned the firing of Chief Sir. Explain to our listeners why this is so very important.
Because as long as Mayor Lee continues to protect Sir in position of power, we're just saying it's okay. It's okay that our black and brown brothers and sisters are getting murdered in the streets by taxpayer-dollared police. And you're continuing to leave people in power who are making these calls that say it's okay and we need to actually protect these other officers who are involved in these killings.
Last question. Maybe if you could talk about the larger context of organizing as it relates to challenging systems of oppression here in the United States.
A lot of times we talk about organizing, community building, because we all need to be more connected. But in this type of organizing, we need to really recognize who are at fault, who's protecting these systems that continue to allow black and brown lives to be valueless or murdered. And so when we are doing these types of actions, it's really important for us to be strategic, to be tactful, and to be really clear that we're not just a bunch of random folks coming together and stirring trouble, but this is really well planned out and really thought through about why we're coming here, who we're targeting, and what we're asking for. And that we are a huge community that is very coordinated.
Rather than respond to the demands presented by community members, Mayor Lee actively chose to have more than a dozen San Francisco police officers act as his personal security force by denying peaceful protesters the ability to approach his iron security door. But the mayor's lackluster response did not deter organizers. The collective continued to speak out against the injustices perpetrated by the state against black and brown people in this country. Two individuals that spoke were Kat Brooks, a member of the Anti-Police Terror Project, and Alex Tom, the executive director of the Chinese Progressive Association. First Kat Brooks, and later followed by Alex Tom.
I'd love to say to him and more to y'all, first, just thank you for being out here. This is the second annual 96 Hours of Direct Action. It's been an incredible day, right? We saw Libby. We visited Wentz. We saw Sir. Now we're talking to this guy. We did the Oakland Airport. McDonald's. We'll be at San Francisco Airport later tonight. But really, I'm not going to talk long because I know that I'm tired and delirious. It might not make too much sense. But I just want to say we can't stop, right? And I'm really clear that we're exhausted. I know you're tired. I know your husbands are tired. Your wives are tired. Your children are tired of you being out here. But this is when we have to figure out what the rotation is, right? Who rests while others work? How do we change up our strategy? Maybe this is the time for door knocking so we recruit more people into our movement so we can keep going. Because this is the time when movements break, right? This is what they're waiting on. That's why they're just standing there. That's why they let us roll up on Third House. That's why they got this hands-off policy, because they're waiting for us to exhaust ourselves. So those are my words to you now, is how do we rest in between the moments so that we can continue this work for the long haul? It is our duty to this generation to push the envelope, right? To break through the barrier that's sort of been up for the last 35, 40 years and get to the next side. To actually have something tangible to show for it. Self-determined communities that don't rely on police or state terror for safety, right? Self-determined communities where we've managed to shift the paradigm in our own minds and rejected the lie of white supremacy completely. And so that's the real work, and that's what we got to get to, right? And then we have to figure out how we take it up a notch, right? How do we continue to challenge this system? They're used to this now. This is great. We got to keep it going, but let's start to strategize and organize about what is the next step we have to take to get to the next level of this struggle. So thank you. Please rest. Please take care of yourself so we can remain engaged. Power to the people. I love you all.
Next we have Alex from CPA, and his little baby is so cute. Please give him a round of applause. You got a little mini-me.
How's everyone doing? Good morning. I'm here today to be in solidarity with everyone here, but I'm also here today to show that it's important for all of us to be standing up and to show that in this moment right now we really need to reclaim the spirit of MLK, and we actually need to show that we need peace and we need justice. So we need to turn it up. We need to turn it up, right? I'm also here wearing multiple hats. Of course, I'm here as an individual, but I'm also, I'm also a father, right? I'm also a member of Left Roots, member of Asians for Black Lives. I work at the Chinese Progressive Association. I'm actually even a faculty member and a union member of AFT 2121. And I say all this is because we need to lift all our voices, all of our identities, and we need to make sure that the powers that be, in this case, for our Mayor Ed Lee, to know that the Asian community cares about this issue, is concerned about this issue. We need to call upon our elders and people like Ed Lee who were part of the movement to come and sit with us at the table. We also need to recognize that what's happening right now in the country with Black Lives Matter and this movement is nothing more than visibilizing the oppression and the exploitation that has already long existed in our communities. And that this is the moment that we need to step up, right? This is the moment that there's political space that's being created, there's political will that's being created, so folks like us and folks who are in power have political space to make things happen. So that's why we're here so freaking early in the morning. Is that right? And that's why we all need to step up. And I'm personally committed to bringing along our entire community, right? We need to bring hundreds of people out here on the streets. We need to bring our parents, our neighbors. We need to bring workers, tenants, everyone. But I'm also here just because I'm inspired by the moment and inspired by the new generation in our community, in the Black community and the Asian community for stepping up and leading the way. So thank you all.
After Alex spoke, I was able to catch up with him for a brief talk. I began by asking him to describe what was taking place and why was it important for him to be there in solidarity with members of Black Lives Matter.
So in particular right now in the current moment, the Black Lives Matter movement has made the police killings of black folks in San Francisco and the rest of the nation so visibilizing a lot of the oppression and exploitation that's happening. And I personally feel that there is a political opportunity, a political moment, political space that has opened up for people in power, people in the community to really step up and make some changes. And these changes are just going to catalyze a much larger movement. And today, especially for MLK, the weekend, we need to reclaim that spirit and to remember what MLK stood for.
One thing that I thought was really significant is the fact that key Asian leadership in San Francisco and throughout the Bay have gathered here this morning to really challenge and question Mayor Adley's decisions around supporting Chief Sir, his refusal to really acknowledge what's taking place, and then also the death and murder, basically execution of Mario Woods here in San Francisco, as well as the other two men that have been mentioned as well.
As Asian Americans in the Bay Area, which is nearly 25% Asian Americans, and in San Francisco, where it's about almost 35% Asian Americans, we cannot stay silent on this issue. And for the people who are silent, we'll end up being used as a wedge. And oftentimes Asian people are pitted against black folks because of a lot of issues around displacement and gentrification, and a lot of new families moving into black communities. And so that's already happening because of the way the system fractures us and alienates us from each other so that we are divided. And so if Asian folks don't stand up, we are complicit to these divisions.
Based on your political actions, your involvement in the community, you're well respected, right? The fact that Mayor Adley has refused to be non-responsive, and then also has San Francisco Police Department acting as his private security, refusing and denying entrance to not his house, but just his door. What kind of message does that send to you as a taxpayer and somebody who is involved on various levels as it relates to the Asian community as well as various other communities of color?
First off, this action and this event actually is very peaceful. And for a mayor who wants to be talking to all communities and reaching out, this is actually a perfect opportunity for that to happen. And this is not something that we had expected to see. And today we want to just spread the message that there are Asian Americans that do care in the Bay Area and that are involved in the Black Lives Matter movement.
Another person I spoke with about the ReclaimMLK 96 Hours of Action was Adam Jordan, a member of the Anti-Police Terror Project and the Onyx Organizing Committee. I began by asking him to talk about his interaction with San Francisco police officers once he and other organizers peacefully attempted to leave a list of demands at Mayor Lee's doorstep.
Well, when public service become private security guards, when they deny a civil disobedience that is a constitutional right, when they deny people from simply ringing a doorbell or putting a letter into under a door, they deny the actual grievance that these people have. So if I understand, if we were out here being violent, vulgar, destructive, we're none of those things. We are having a civil disobedience because it is the least we should do in this epidemic of murder that we face today.
And you said something that I thought was really profound and on point when you questioned the officers and you asked, is there a statute, is there a particular statute on the books?
I said, is it an infraction? Is it a misdemeanor? I mean, it's not a felony because I understand trespassing and burglary, you have to actually enter the home. But if you are legally able to walk up to a doorway, even if the doorway says no soliciting, if you're not actually soliciting, if you're not actually trying to sell something, you can still walk up to the doorway and say, ring, hello, I'm here to give you a letter. That's not illegal. Mailmen do it all the time. But this private security, the SFPD, are denying people access to even be able to speak with the mayor. And the mayor hasn't come out. The mayor hasn't looked out his window. In fact, earlier when we did Wake Up Chief Sir this same morning, Chief Sir didn't come out. Chief Sir did not look out his window. We saw him peek his little camera phone out and try to record us for a moment. But just like this, there was no interaction. But at least there at the police, at Wake Up Sir, we were able to get to the door and we were able to deliver accoutrements of our appreciation. We left some garbage for the garbage that he is.
And you said something that I thought was really profound and on point when you questioned the officers and you asked, is there a statute, is there a particular statute on the books?
I
What kind of message does that send to you directly and activists when you have city officials, you have Mayor Ed Lee, you have Sir, all these different things. So this has been a part of the 96 hours of activism, right, on the eve of Martin Luther King Day, right? So this is one of many different things that have taken place and will continue to take place, right? But when these people refuse to even acknowledge, show face, have some representative, somebody to address the particular demands and concerns of taxpayers, voters, citizens, what kind of message is it sending you as an activist and organizer?
It's the same message that the police union sent. It's the same message that Police Officers Benevolency Association sends, that we're the bad guys and they're the good guys. I mean, the Police Officers Association has lied continuously and said that there's a war on police when it's a 20-year low of violence against police nationally. The entire year of 2015 is 14.5% down. So a 40-year high for police violence. And in the reaction that the police have to civil disobedience shows that they do not care for their community, that they care for the status quo. Ed Lee, it was just like Leland Yee, are corrupt political figures that make money off the backs of poor oppressed people by letting land grab developers take homes away and turn them into $6,000 apartments.
Why Mayor Ed Lee and why Chief Sir? Why are these particular folks been targeted in context also with the murder execution of Mario Wood?
Well, in particular, Chief Sir has a long and blighted history. He's the only chief that I've ever heard of that was demoted not once, but twice, and also indicted before he became chief. He was demoted directly before he became chief of police. 2003, Deputy Chief Sir was charged with allegedly conspiring to obstruct the investigation into the case of off-duty cops beating up 2 gay men and stealing their fajitas, also known as Fajita-gate. I was around in the Castro at that time. I remember when those men were jumped. They were robbed, and he helped cover it up. And he was indicted for that, but the judge, and look, when you're indicted, you usually get convicted, but the judge threw that out because at the time he was a captain of the police force. Demotion number 1, Chief Heather Fong at the time reassigned Sir to head of patrol to guard the city's water supply, reporting for mishandling a G8 protest where a police officer had a fractured skull. Demotion number 2, Sir is demoted to captain after failing to report a rape because of female or domestic violence charge because the female friend's boyfriend was a friend of his. 2011, Sir is elected newly by Ed Lee. See, this is called cronyism. Somebody who's demoted, who's indicted, demoted again, and then made chief. That's cronyism, of course, because of the money. Sir is then sued for retaliation by an SFPD lawyer who recommended his firing for the mishandling of the domestic violence incident, and he fired 2 weeks after becoming chief. The lawyer won the suit and settled out of court for $750,000. That's taxpayers' money. 2014 drug tester skimming supplies in crime lab jeopardizes thousands of cases. The whistleblower knew and said, the Chief Sir knew, and the police department knew that these people were being put in jail illegally. 2015 SFPD officers fatally shot Amilcar Perez Lopez. Sir's defense was that he was coming towards the officers with a knife, but the autopsy showed that the man was shot in the back. Okay, the exposure in 2015 March, the exposure of racist text exchange by more than a dozen SFPD cops jeopardizes thousands of cases, reveals a troubling culture inside the rank and file. April 2015, federal public defenders cast doubts on a Tenderloin drug sting that only indicted black people, despite surveillance videos showing people of other races attempting to sell drugs to undercover cops. In June 2015, Sir draws criticism for declining to pursue grant money to clear a backlog of rape kits and reverses his position and pledges to get the job done. July 2015, most of the political fallout from Kate Stenel's murder fall on Sheriff Ross Markarimi, but the gun that killed her was stolen from a Bureau of Land Management car in the city. Police search but are unable to find the gun until it is used to kill Stenel, which also is used by presidential candidate Trump to villainize all South American and Mexican immigrants now. Because when Steno was killed, he says these people came over. That he doesn't talk about the gun was from Bureau of Land Management. He doesn't talk about SFPD failed to find a stolen gun. This gun that was found on a bench by a mentally ill homeless man. And the homeless man even said he's looking at murder right now. When he picked the gun up and is shot, he wasn't even trying to rob the lady. He was all the way down the pier. Well, and my last and not least, Mario Woods was shot and killed by 5 SFPD police officers. See, we
can't say shot and killed. It was a complete execution.
He was executed. The video, even other officers who do not wish to be named said it was atrocious. Even the officers I speak to, because I'll speak to a police officer, because I don't believe every single pig is bad. But see, the police institution is a white supremacist institution. So it doesn't matter if they're a black, white, or Spanish or Asian. They're pushing an institutional line that destroys black families. The war on drugs was a war on black people, because when I'm 8 times more likely to go to jail holding the same amount of marijuana, that if there's 10 black guys and 10 white guys, 8 black guys are going to jail and 10 white guys ain't. That's not fair. That's not unbiased.
That just speaks to the list of demands, and in particular the firing, the demand that Chief Sir must be fired and removed completely from the San Francisco Police Department or any kind of position of authority. Maybe you can talk, because right now Mayor Lee's been really quiet on that, but I see this as being part of what's happening nationally, where the demands have increased, and it's about people being removed completely from office.
Well, like I was mentioning about the police union has made it so they are so strong and so powerful politically, we can't even get rid of the bad apples. Now, if you can't get rid of the bad apples, if you can't get rid of the people that are dealing with innocent citizens with a gun, police officers who interact with people and pull their gun and use their gun more often than not, if you can't get those bad apples out of the barrel, the whole barrel's bad. So if we have an institution that doesn't even let us, if you're a carpenter and the homes keep falling down and killing people, they take your contracting license. If you were a doctor and you kept killing people on the surgery, you'd lose your medical license. But we can't get rid of these bad cops. And when we can't get rid of these bad cops, we can't get rid of these bad politicians. Because these politicians will say, oh, I spoke to the family when I did an interview on the news. I was speaking to them. No, you were speaking to a reporter on television. When the family asked for an apology, you said, I apologize. You never spoke to the family. What politicians do is lie and use their propaganda to reinforce their own idea of what they want to be going on and not the actual reality.
Help me understand, what's the next level of organizing or strategizing around removing these people from office? Is there a plan, a concrete plan to put people in office that support a Black Lives Movement agenda, right?
I mean, I myself, being a black revolutionary, believe the system is broken, but there are many people within Black Lives Matter who have talked to city members and city council members that understand, being people of color, we are beset upon by many sides. But we are losing our homes. We have lost our jobs. Our schools are closing and inadequate. When you are unable to get a high school diploma, you're 60% more likely to go to jail. A school to jail pipeline. The California prison system has built 22 prisons, and California has built 1 college in 40 years. 40 years. The last college that was built was Cal. 50 years ago when they finished building Cal. So this is the system that we have, and we do have politicians that do understand that our lives matter. Black lives, Asian lives, poor lives, all of these lives matter.
Last question. Kat mentioned about, building more people coming out and being actively involved in these movements, right, in these actions, because folks are exhausted. We're seeing the same faces over and over again, and there's a need to actually have more people involved. This morning we have Agent for Black Lives, right? This is a call that they put out directly to challenge Mayor Lee and bring people from his own community and answer directly to them, and he's refused to answer. But maybe if you could speak directly to the need to have more people become involved within this movement.
Well, one of the things that I remember about Occupy Oakland that I really enjoyed was that there were a lot of new faces, that were people that cared about the community. Occupy Oakland had a lot of things that were completely wrong with it, and that's why it didn't work out. There's reasons things don't work out. But the thing about it, bringing new faces and new blood and new people who care about other people. See, that's the simple thing. Where I don't care if you're white, yellow, green, blue, or pink. If you care about if you're a human, caring about other humans, I'm willing to work with you. If you're going to judge me for my complexion or my theology or my sexuality or my gender and not how I act or my work, then I don't want to associate with you. When these people look at me as a assailant, they look at me as a perpetrator. I've been beaten up and arrested by cops for standing, waiting for a light to change, and then them telling me I look like somebody that robbed somebody. This is the systems that we have to deal with right now. So I know that with Black Lives Matter, which kind of reminds me of the Occupy movement, except much more focused, with demands and with real leadership, with new faces coming in, with other people I've seen people from the old Occupy movement come be allies and help us, because without the liberation of our people, there is no liberation for any people. The Asians and Black lives understand, without the liberation of the most oppressed, all people are still oppressed. So as soon as we're able to stop the oppression of us, then we can start working on the oppression of all. But you need to be coming out to be able to save people's lives, to be able to change, we need to change the process and the procedures of how police interact with us, and we need enough people to change the actual structure of the systems that work against us.
That was Adam Jordan, a member of the Anti-Police Terror Project and the Onyx Organizing Committee. You're listening to Hard Knock on the Pacifica Network. I'm Anita Johnson. Stay tuned.
One day, when the glory comes, it will be ours, it will be ours. Oh, one day, when the war is won, we will be sure, we will be sure. Oh, glory, glory, glory. Oh.
To the heavens, no man, no weapon formed against, yes, glory is destined. Everyday women and men become legends. Sins that go against our skin become blessings. The movement is a rhythm to us. Freedom is like religion to us. Justice is juxtaposition in us. Justice for all just ain't specific enough. One son died, the spirit is revisiting us. True and living in us. Resistance is us. That's why Rosa sat on the bus. That's why we walk through Ferguson with our hands up. When it go down, we woman and man up. They say stay down, and we stand up. Shots we on the ground, the camera panned up. King pointed to the mountaintop, and we ran up.
One day, when the glory comes, it will be ours. Okay. It will be ours. Oh, one day.
Okay, here we go. Ladies and gentlemen, this is an emergency update, and I need to get the word out immediately. And also TVOI News is reporting this. We have Pacific Patriots Network trying to confirm the details. Could I see that cell phone right there? Because I need to grab some verbiage here from TVOI. Here we go. Ladies and gentlemen, along with or in concert with a whole bunch of people that are trying to confirm this information, okay? What details I have, I'm going to convey to you, and I'm going to be able to shore them up, and I want you to stand by because I'm immediately heading to the courthouse. I'll be live streaming from the courthouse with further detailed information. This is what I know as of right now. Per this emergency alert, the FBI is setting up a trauma, and this is the way it's coming off of TVOI News. FBI is setting up a trauma unit at the local hospital. Now, what they've done is they brought in surgical teams. They've asked for blood. This came from whistleblowers that are very well aware of the situation. Those whistleblowers were concerned about coming forward, but they were even more concerned about the posturing by the Federal Bureau of Investigations. Okay, the directive that was given, in addition to having surgical teams at the hospital commandeering a portion of it, calling for blood. These are the details as they were coming to me. They've also called for a medevac helicopter to be on standby at Burns Airport. This comes from the FBI. Now, one special note is that this posturing and this escalation at this point in time, preparing for some bloodbath, I take it, has come without any communication or dialogue whatsoever between the FBI and the people and the good folks at the refuge. I'm at the refuge right now. We are going to address it. Now, Fox News has confirmed directly with the FBI. The FBI has stated that, yes, in fact, it is true that they've commandeered a portion of the hospital. They do have the surgical team. They do have the helicopter on standby. But their words to news media was that there's nothing imminent. So we're going to get further details. I'm going to be broadcasting from the courthouse here momentarily. You guys stand by for the next update, but stay tuned. This is an escalation that I would say is unnecessary, uncalled for, inappropriate, especially because the FBI has not engaged in any dialogue whatsoever to resolve these issues peacefully, as they indicated they wanted to do the other day. Now they're calling in for surgical teams for what? Negotiations don't require surgical teams. Negotiations don't require blood. Negotiations don't require helicopters. Looks like they're going to be held accountable for their actions, and especially for their inaction as it relates to communication and open dialogue to resolve these issues. I'll be broadcasting from the courthouse. Get this information out far and wide with as many people as possible. And I will talk to you guys in just a few minutes. I'm Pete Santilli, over and out here at Burns, Oregon, at the Malheur Wildlife Refuge, which is now known as the Harney County Resource Center. Be right with you. Connect.
It keeps me from 50.
Yeah, there you go. Or pacing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you ready?
Go for it.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm with Anthony Bosworth. You're going to get to know him a little bit better. I wanted to spend a few minutes with him. He's been here on the ground helping Chris Ann Hall. That was a tremendous event, a 2-day session, her teaching the U.S. Constitution here. But Anthony Bosworth, it's been an honor to meet you. I've heard so much about you. I haven't had the opportunity to meet you in person, and I certainly wanted to introduce you to our listening audience. But tell us, I mean, you've been on these types of missions to restore our constitutional republic. You've been on these missions for a while now. This is nothing. This isn't your first rodeo, as they say, is it?
It's not.
What inspired you to come out here? Not just Chris Ann Hall, but you wanted to find out what's going on out here in Burns, right?
The search for truth.
Yeah,
there you go. The search for truth. You know, that's one thing that goes hand in hand is truth and liberty. You know, and we can't pursue liberty if we don't pursue the truth. Mm-hmm. And that was one of the big things that brought me here.
Before we get into this discussion, I want you to introduce yourself to our listening audience as to who you are. I definitely want you to give out a website so people can learn a little bit more about you. There's a lot of information online. You've been standing up for our Second Amendment constitutional rights for a long time now. When did you get started as an activist?
Well, I actually got started in the liberty movement probably 2005 is when I first got started. I returned home from Iraq. I deployed to Katrina as a soldier. And while I was patrolling the streets of Katrina as a soldier, I looked down and I realized that I had become something I did not like. That's when I realized that men with guns had to be held at a higher standard, especially men that were paid by the government. And one day I looked down and I realized I was one of them. I was a man in uniform with a gun, and I was committing atrocities on American soil, and that atrocity was being in uniform, patrolling American streets as a soldier. And I became ashamed of myself. And that was my awakening. That was my great awakening. And
Were you involved in gun confiscation at that time when you were in uniform?
I personally wasn't. I witnessed it. I seen it happen, and I seen the reasonings for it. And it's not really what the American people thought it was. The people weren't shooting at law enforcement and rescue helicopters. You got to realize they were trapped on their roofs. They were thirsty. They were hungry. They had dead family members next to them on these roofs, and helicopter after helicopter would fly over and not save them. And they were discharging firearms trying to get attention because they needed help. And that was literally all it took to seize control, you know, and go after the guns.
Right. So you had an awakening around 2005 or so, right? And you made a commitment to say, you know what, I swore an oath. I understand what that oath is now, and I'm going to uphold
I
it.
swore that day I would never catch myself on the wrong side again.
Wow, that's great. So it's been a long journey, a difficult journey, hasn't it? Because when you started this in 2005, you probably got looked at like you had 10 heads, didn't you?
Oh yeah. I mean, it was a foreign language to everybody.
Right.
It really was.
Times have changed pretty dramatically. And my journey literally began with Bundy Ranch. It was my first field reporting thing. It was my very first. I had never left the studio before, but learning about our constitutional rights through the Bundy family, learning about our land rights, learning how to become an activist out in the field. A lot of things have happened in just the past couple of years. We've made great advances, haven't we?
Great advances. And really, we look at it as advances, and it's really not advances. It's actually, we're going back to our foundation.
Towards restoration.
Exactly. We're going back to what we were 200 years ago.
Right.
We're going back to that solid foundation. We're getting rid of all the perversion that we've allowed to overtake our government.
That's right. And your connection to Chris Ann Hall came through the Liberty Movement. You've been in contact with her for a while. I'm interested to hear about that.
Exactly.
I was pleased to see that you're connected to her. I didn't know until you arrived with her.
Well, it started out early on when she first started doing what she's doing and everything. I seen a little tiny video that and it was probably one of her very first, that she placed on YouTube. And I listened to it, and I was astounded. I was shocked to find out that somebody else interpreted it the same way I did. And so I got in contact with her and her assistant, and we started talking. And through talking and everything, I decided that it would be great to bring her to the state of Washington. And we ended up getting her out there in the state of Washington, and she gave a couple classes out there to a couple political parties out there that we attended and everything. And from there, she's been back, I can't even count how many times. I mean, I know one time she did a Washington State tour for 30 days, just giving classes.
Did she really? Wow.
And I've been to so many of her classes. I've even repeated some of her classes. And every time I learn something new, it becomes clearer. Her message is so well put together, it cannot be argued with.
You brought up that you're teaching her classes. Actually, one thing that I was inspired to think about, because I have, believe it or not, before I shaved my head and got into radio originally, I was, Joe, corporate suit and tie. I was a public speaker. I was a consumer advocate. And I got inspired by listening to Chris Ann Hall and her recruiting people to join her in the Liberty Brigade. And I think there's a powerful message, and she can't do it all by herself. She can't save this country by herself.
That's a fact. I mean, and she's become one of the Liberty leaders.
Yes.
She's waking people up. She's giving them she's bringing them back to the foundation they should have already been at.
Right.
And from there, you can use the foundation as a springboard to fight for your liberties. And remember, fighting for liberty isn't just about guns. It isn't just about coming and standing all the time. There's many ways to fight for liberty. It's action. You must do something.
Yes.
Besides talk.
And education and understanding how we were founded. I mean, I literally had a couple of epiphanies as to, this is how I understood. If I can convey this message, we could resolve any issues.
Exactly.
I mean, right?
Just that moment of clarity.
Yeah.
And that's what you get from the knowledge about liberty is clarity.
Yeah. And Anthony, I did want to spend this time with you to introduce you to our audience. I want to bring you on. I've had you on my show before.
Yes, you have.
And I appreciated that, but I appreciated making the connection with you. here where it counts the most, out in the dirt, right? Because
Exactly.
the Constitution does apply out in the dirt.
It does.
Contrary to what the BLM has told me before.
That's a fact.
But give out a website where people can stay in contact with you.
Well,
do you have a website or a way to stay in touch with you?
We do have a website.
Okay.
It's a group of website, and I just can't remember it right off the top of my head.
That's okay. That's all right. We're going to remain in contact with you. All right.
It's Liberty for All, 3%. We have Facebook page, Liberty for All, 3% Washington. We also have we have another branch of Liberty for All down in Arizona, and that's headed up by Cope Reynolds.
And if people want to know about your activism, they can go Google Anthony Bosworth in Washington State, and they'll have plenty of material to study up on you, right?
Yeah, Anthony Bosworth. I've got a Facebook page called Anthony Bosworth the Patriot, and that originally started out as my sheriff campaign page.
Oh, great.
And after I run for sheriff and changed that whole platform, we changed it to the Patriot because we didn't want to mislead people thinking that I was still running for sheriff.
Awesome. Pleasure to introduce you to our audience. I'm sure we'll be in touch. Thanks a
Pete.
lot. Yeah, thank you. Awesome. That's all we needed, man. That's great. I'm glad we had that opportunity. Yep. And ladies and gentlemen, just stand by. We're going to be doing some more updates. I have some very, very important ones that are going to be coming today. I'm standing by. There will be, I'm telling news development.
Hard words, but we needed to hear them. Now I'm going to quickly read a quote from Theodore Roosevelt. It's not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who's actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs and comes up short again and again, because there is not effort without error and shortcomings. But who does, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly. So that is his place, shall never be with those cold and timid souls who know neither victory or defeat. Ladies and gentlemen, you're all in the ring when you're here today. Every single one of you. But tell me, is the boxer's first time in the ring when it's time to fight? Make sure when you go home that you don't just leave it at this, that you keep going, that you spread the word to people who need to hear it, because I guarantee this is not all of the gun owners in America here today. This is not all the gun owners in Oregon here today, and we can get them here if we keep going. Now, ladies and gentlemen, what we've got next is we've got another one of Washington's 3%ers. His name is Anthony Bosworth, and he's a member of the Washington 3%. He helped organize the I-594 rally and has also run for sheriff in Yakima County. And he's going to be talking on these two subjects today. Ladies and gentlemen, Anthony Bosworth.
We're going to take a little break here real quick, and I'm going to call up one of your own. Mary? She's one of your county commissioners.
Thank you. I'm not going to take too much of his time. I do want to say thank you all for being here, and never underestimate the importance of one email, one phone call, one vote. That has made all the difference, and the very fact that you have all been vocal says a lot. Just to give you a little background quickly, there are 23 counties out of 36 that have passed resolutions or ordinances or board orders that are opposing Senate Bill 941. There are others in the works. So make sure you contact your cities, your counties, your county commissioners. Remember, these people get elected every 4 years, or get reelected or don't get reelected. So those emails and those phone calls can make a difference. And what we couldn't do at the state level, we can do at the county level. So don't stop trying and don't give up. Thank you all for being here.
Oregon, it is very important that your people be involved. Very much so. That's why I was willing to give up some of my time for one of your people here. As you were told, I run for Yakima County Sheriff. I run on a constitutional platform. I have absolutely no law enforcement experience at all. I'm a combat veteran, and I looked around, and what we noticed is our sheriffs don't think like we do. We need citizen sheriffs, constitutional sheriffs. I run against 5 other candidates, all of them with over 20 years experience. They told me I had to pay $900 extortion fee to the state to run for a county sheriff. I refused to. Instead, I went to the citizens and said they refuse to let me run if I don't pay their extortion. I got signatures. In 3 days, we got 1,400 signatures from the citizens within the county. I run for sheriff, and I didn't fall for their game. I did not comply with their rules. I showed them that a citizen can run for sheriff. When we run for sheriff as a constitutional sheriff, we controlled the whole race. No, I did not win. But we set records, we broke records, we set history, and we controlled the race all the way through it. Not one time during the race did budget come up, did your normal law enforcement talk come up. It was constitutional talk all the way through the race. One citizen stepped forward and said he had enough and run for sheriff and changed the whole outcome of the race. They put all their men, all their money running against a citizen. They feared the citizen standing up and demanding their chance. That being said, the most important official in your county, the most powerful official in your county is your sheriff. There is not a government agency that can do business within your county. Why? Excuse me. Oregon State has 36 counties. That's 36 sheriffs. How many sheriffs do we have here today? 1. That's shameful. When I run for sheriff, they ask me, what are you going to do to secure our weapons rights, our right to self-defense? And I said, I'll stand the line in front of you and I'll fire the first bullet in defense of your firearms, your rights of defense, if I have to. I will activate the militias. I will recreate sheriff posses. We'll get the citizens involved. Instead of giving people havoc over concealed weapons permits, as sheriff, I would not require you to have concealed weapons permits. Why? Because it's a violation of your Constitution. And I brought it up before them. If you want to make sure reasonable Americans have the guns, we have ranges. The law enforcement has ranges. Bring the people in and train them. If you want to come train with us on our weekends, we'll pay your fee to the federal government that you would normally have to pay for that concealed weapons permit. We'll still issue you that concealed weapons permit when you travel outside of our county, but within this county, it would not be required. That's constitutional, people. If you have a sheriff that supports background checks, supports concealed weapons permits, I'm telling you, he's not constitutional. You need to get constitutional sheriffs. If you have a constitutional sheriff, EPA, DEA, FBI, none of them can do business within your counties without your sheriff's written permission. Don't let them fool you. If they're doing business within the county, it's at the blessing of your sheriff. He has the authority to stop it. He does not have to let them abuse you. The IRS does not even have the authority to seize your home without a trial, without the blessing of your sheriff. That is a constitutional sheriff, people. That's where we need to go from here. At no time should we ever have to wonder if we can pack our birthright for self-defense anywhere we go. It's a proven fact. Have you ever seen somebody shot at one of these? Have you ever seen anybody injured with a firearm at one of these? This is the safest place in Oregon today. I guarantee you it. When we pulled the rally December 13th in Olympia, we worked with our state patrol. But let's back up a little bit. When we told them we were coming, and we were coming armed, and people, we came locked and loaded. We played no games. We told them we were coming. We were going to be peaceful, but we were not going to be moved. They locked us out of our Capitol. They put up barricades. When we met them at the barricades, we told them you've got two choices. Move the barricades now or wait until the people get here and we're going to move them. This is our Capitol. It's our property and we're going to take it. We did. They moved the barricades and they let us in. They give us no more grief. We went back because one of our House representatives had the audacity to say that he was going to make a House rule, an edict, that said that a firearm is now an object, excuse me, it's a sign, it's an object that you use to be rebellious with. They're reclassifying it as a arms to something else so they could deny us the right to be there with it. And we asked them, so if we lock and load and go into the Capitol building, is it a firearm now? Do you want to keep pushing this issue? You try to take an inch, we guarantee you, and this is the call of LFA, Liberty for All of Washington, this is the call that we put out nationwide to the government. You even attempt to take 1 inch, we're going to take back a mile. Every time you try to even approach our rights, we're going to make it hurt. We're going to take back a mile every time. We're going to take it back 260 years. You keep pushing us. We will not comply. We're going to stand and we're going to move forward and you will step aside for us because the last time I checked, we're the rightful masters. Are we not? Have not your brothers, your fathers, your mothers died and bled for this country? Why would we ever let a tyrant think he was our master? It's time, Oregon, it's time, Washington, it's time, America, that we stand the line and say not 1 more inch. We need to get constitutional sheriffs in and we need to start pushing back. I'm telling you now, you've got 1 sheriff out of 36 counties. You've got how many state representatives, how many congressmen, how many senators that claim to be on your side. I would like every state official that's here to step up front here. Please. Every elected official. Keep in mind, Mary was here. Oh, she's way back there. I'll wait for you. These are your state officials that are on your side. They had the gumption to come and stand with you. They're standing the line with you. They're putting their reputations on the line for you. These are your elected officials that are on your side. Remember that. I'll tell you now, look left, look right, look behind you. Everybody, look. There is more elected officials in this state than there is people standing here today. You should have as many elected officials standing up here on your side as there is these amount of people that are out here today. If they're not here today, they don't believe your rights are worth standing for. Get rid of them. Don't play games with them anymore. Don't fall for their crap. They're saying that they're on your side. Well, where are they on the day that you need them? It ain't about the votes. It's about non-compliance. They want to take your rights. You remember one thing. It's not your rights. It's not one of your rights. Where's the children? It's the children's rights. Your fathers, your forefathers secured your rights and your freedoms. It's your job to secure the freedoms and the rights of your children and your grandchildren. It's not your rights you're squandering. They've already been earned for you. You do not have the right to give them away. It's your children's rights you're fighting for. And if you can't see that now, your children are going to look upon you in the future and going to ask you why you did nothing to secure something that you were given, that was already earned for you. Now you got the little Irishman a little bit upset here. Give me a second to calm back down. But this is what we need to remember, people. We don't bend knees to tyrants. We stand. We don't give up. We fight back. God bless America. God bless Oregon. And God bless every one of you.
Fight it, but we tried to give them ways that they could do it right if they wanted to. Right, I say that kind of rhetorically. But the point is that they shot down even those. They refused to consider anything from us on this. And one of the people who was really instrumental in helping push some of these, I guess, additions or helpful things to it, such as the felony mark on your driver's license. Who knows that? Yeah? All right. Was Senator Kim Thatcher. So I'll introduce Senator Kim Thatcher from the Oregon State Senate.
How many of you think criminals obey laws? Got a bridge to sell you over the Columbia. I appreciate all the written testimony that the legislators received, and for many of you who are here today, they were heartfelt, deeply held convictions communicated to the legislators, and you made people in that building behind us, me anyway, pay attention. They stood up and they were worried, and you know what? The proponents of the bill decided they would create their own grassroots. They created a steady stream of concocted phone calls to legislators. An anti-gun group orchestrated grassroots, unquote, air quotes, as Denise Quinn Nanke would say, by somehow finding people who would supposedly like expanded background checks and dropping the caller into the legislator's office, one after another after another. And they're to tell us that they support background checks, as if we now have no background checks. Obviously, they don't know even what we have. So one after another, these calls would come in, and you could hear a person in the background monitoring the calls. And sometimes you would hear something like, "Do not let that one through." Well, there were occasions where that monitor wasn't successful censoring a call. One woman called and said this: "I was connected to your office by the people wanting background checks for guns. I have to say I disagree with that bill. I think it's going to make it cumbersome for private people to do, to sell stuff. I just wanted to let you know my opinion." I was able to get that because that was left on my voicemail. And to the letters lawmakers received, for every 75 letters or so we received from cogent original thought, you would actually put some thought into the letters you would write, there was one plug-and-play letter from the supporters of the bill. And they would always be parroting the same tired statistics of all the tragedy that would be prevented if only we had this law in place. And I want to highlight some of the things that came from you. And then I will highlight a letter I received from a proponent, only because he was one of the rare ones who attempted to have an original cogent thought. He was wrong, but at least he tried to communicate something with reason. All right, so first, here are highlights from your letters. Punishes and prohibits responsible citizens. Zero impact on reducing crime. Enforcement would depend on a gun registry. Gun registries always lead to confiscation. Confiscation doesn't happen at first until one day, shazam, it does. Confiscation leads to tyranny. And here is something that I would hear that the proponents would say, it doesn't say anything about owning guns in the Bible. Well, though owning a gun is not in the Bible specifically, the right to arm oneself in defense of life, liberty, and property is in the Bible. This law will create confusion and expense. And the pew poll, that says nearly 6 out of 10, for the first time in a few decades, couple decades, nearly 6 out of 10 Americans believe gun ownership does more to protect people than it does to endanger personal safety. It will waste law enforcement resources. It forces payment of a government fee to exercise a constitutional right. It creates criminals out of law-abiding people. It creates numerous, cited time after time, all these numerous impossible and impractical situations people could be placed in, which would endanger lives. The background check system is already flawed and overburdened and fraught with mistakes and delays. It creates resentment and division among the people. It's about control of the citizenry. It's an exchange of freedom for some perceived security. And that's just a sampling of all the themes that we received in these letters. Now, here are a few short excerpts from your letters. Bob Jensen from the Coast said, "Why, if background checks will make us safer, do we have the exemption for relatives? Are relatives any more trustworthy? Or is the reasoning that if this bill should become law, that the writers will return and amend it? Stay tuned, I guess." M. Baker said, and this is great, "I would like to suggest a bill to make it illegal for politicians to be under the influence of any antidepressants or other mood-altering substances. Anyone undergoing treatment for mental health issues also should not legally be allowed to participate in making laws of any kind, and especially ones taking away the rights of law-abiding citizens." Good job, M. Baker. Dale Casey from Medford said, "This is an example of a very bad bill, and if enacted would be even worse than the foolish people who are pushing and voting for it. They are telling us, commoners, that we are not responsible enough to judge for ourselves of the character of people." Then he adds this, I love this. "That may be very true for those who voted for anyone in the legislature who would vote for such a terrible and controlling bill." Love it. Now, the highlights from people who supported 941, it all revolved around some statistics. They all had them about in the same area. How many fewer police were shot, supposedly? How many fewer women shot by intimate partners? You've heard the tired line that they spill. And it would all keep guns out of the hands of the wrong people and save lives. So, on those points, I want to add an excerpt from a letter from a proponent. He said, "I am writing in support of expanded background checks for gun ownership. I support our Constitution and the Second Amendment. However, the truth is that for every constitutional amendment, there are caveats. There are restrictions to free speech. You can't libel or yell fire in a crowded theater. Restrictions to voting. Prisoners don't have that right. Restrictions to freedom of the press, libel and slander, etc. Our individual freedoms aren't limitless. It's our government's role." Oh, this kills me. "It's our government's role and responsibility to protect all citizens, and one person's individual freedoms will eventually compromise another's." End quote. Huh? First of all, I think we can all agree that we shouldn't unjustifiably hurt people or take their stuff, right? The limits on constitutional rights this person cited are that your rights end when you infringe on the rights of others. No, you cannot take other people's stuff through libel, slander. You steal a person's reputation. Prisoners, well, gee, they're in prison. Some of their rights are temporarily suspended. They can't vote either. Making it so that law-abiding citizens are treated like criminals is not a justifiable limit to a constitutional right. The person cites examples of people that took actions that are wrong in the process of exercising their right. The examples he cites show a disconnect between rights and responsibilities. 941 says we are all wrong unless we take government-mandated action. That's a bit upside down to me. So yes, though there are limits to free speech. You can't incite riots. You can't yell fire in a crowded theater unless, of course, there is actually a fire. And you can't steal the reputation of another and hurt their good name by lying about them. We are told that 941 is about keeping guns out of the hands of the wrong people and saving lives. But could you imagine having to go through a background check to write or speak something to someone? After all, words in the mouths of the wrong people could kill. Think of the cyber bullies out there who hound some people to the brink of suicide. Think of the riots that have been incited, ending up killing innocent people. Should we be forced to show up at a federally licensed speech permission giver for a background check to pay a fee every time we wish to exercise the right of free speech? How about voting? There are limits to that right also. You have to be a citizen, duh. You have to be at least 18, not in prison. You have to be alive and an actual human person, and you're only supposed to do it once during an election. So I submit to you that voting for the wrong people can also cause loss of life. Look what happens in Detroit, Baltimore. I am sure there are 1,000 other examples you could think of where the wrong people in power cause loss of life. But the point is, could you imagine having to pay a government fee in order to exercise your right to vote? That actually used to be a thing. It was called a poll tax. It was intended to keep some of the wrong people from voting, and it's unconstitutional. Yet we are daily being told that in order to trade a gun, you have to pay money and get a background check. Every time, even if you just bought one hours before or the day before. Really? Even if you'd already gone through a background check, which legally allows you to carry a concealed handgun. On top of that, we are being told that in order to keep the guns out of the hands of the wrong people, we need to make it more and more difficult and expensive to get them into the hands of the right people. So the question is, who are the right people? Who are the right people to speak and write? Anyone, as long as they don't purposely steal another's reputation through slander, libel, or incite riots. Who are the right people to vote? Any citizen of our country of a certain age and not in prison. Who are the right people to bear arms? Anyone, as long as they are not justifiably hurting another, unjustifiably hurting another, or taking their things. Should a person be allowed to run a background check on an individual before they transfer a gun? I think so. That's why I had an amendment that would put the responsibility on the seller to do a background check when they deem it necessary to ensure a prohibited person isn't getting a gun. I had another that would mark a driver's license on an ID card with a mark that indicated the person was prohibited from buying a gun. That way, good people wouldn't have to be proving a negative. Basically, any of our rights should be freely exercised, and we should not have to prove a negative before exercising them. I repeat, we should not have to prove a negative before exercising any of our rights. One time or another in history, the government has gone too far. It has allowed men to take away another man's freedom through slavery. It has banned the use of selling of alcohol, prohibition. It has stopped women and minorities from voting. It has unlawfully seized property, driven natives off their homeland to reservations, put American citizens of Japanese or German descent in internment camps, and a bunch of things I'm sure you can think of. But the point is, when government acts in a way that is obviously wrong to patriots, to those who love the Constitution, it is our obligation as patriots to dissent and work to change the laws and change the people who made those laws to be in harmony with the Constitution. There comes a time when all good men and women have to stand up. Thank you for standing.